On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is talkTV. talkTV News at 10.
Good morning, I'm Emily Rose Adams. Senior staff at Gatwick and Heathrow Airport say everything is working as normal with minimal queues despite warnings of huge delays today. It has more than 1,000 Border Force staff from the PCS union walk out from now until the end of the year, bar the 27th of December, at 6 of Britain's biggest airports. Well, PCS boss Mark Sawatkas told us they wouldn't feel the need to strike if the government would engage with pay negotiations.
But we said to the government 3 weeks ago we would not be having strikes if they said there is money on the table and they want to talk to us about how much, who gets what when, as long as it's done urgently. Their response in 3 weeks has not been a single meeting, a single meaningful response in writing, and most importantly, not a single penny for people they know are living in abject poverty. That's completely unacceptable.
Meanwhile, there's further disruption today with a series of localised strikes on Britain's rail networks. It means motorists could face one of the busiest days of the year on the roads. But one woman's told us she backs striking workers, even though they've put her Christmas plans in chaos.
I think what we need to look at as a country is our infrastructure is crumbling and workers are out on strike because they're not being listened to, because they're being overworked, because they're under mental stress. And I think our government's to blame, not the strikers.
NHS chiefs are urging people not to celebrate Christmas with their grandparents this year if they have a cough or cold. And the government is urging people to get the flu vaccine as the number of people in hospital with the virus has increased by 67% in a week. A panel in the US investigating former President Donald Trump claims he was part of a multi-part conspiracy to overturn his 2020 election defeat. The House of Representatives committee examined the storming of Congress on January the 6th, 2021, and says it would not have happened without Trump. And the final report recommends barring the former president from ever running for office again. A formal review will be held into how the case of Killamarsh criminal Damien Bendall was handled by a probation officer. The 32-year-old was already serving a 24-month suspended sentence for arson when he murdered Terry Harris, her daughter Lacey, son John Paul, and Lacey's friend Connie, with all the children aged between 11 and 13. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's back in Kyiv after visiting the United States. He met with Joe Biden in Washington and delivered a speech to US Congress during the trip, but posted to his Telegram channel this morning confirming he's now in Ukraine and working towards victory. Now time for today's weather with Isabel Lang.
Business sponsors talkTV weather.
Hello. There's a three-way split in the weather today. Central areas look really wet and dull as well, and this frontal system will only slowly track its way up into northern England later. Some snow for some of the higher routes. Chilly to the north, maybe a little bit of wintriness there over higher ground, and in the south it'll brighten up after that wet start, and it will feel mild, particularly in the sunshine in the afternoon, with highs of around 11 or 12 Celsius. That wet weather gradually pushes its way up into Scotland. It does eventually take some mild air right up into the north for the start of Christmas Eve, but it takes its time, engaging in the cold air for a while, giving some snow, particularly north of the central belt. Those high routes could be quite snowy for a few hours, and then we'll find that gradually turns back to rain as the mild air creeps north. Further to the south, it'll be a mild, but not as murky a night, thankfully. Now, into Christmas Eve, temperatures really quite high for the time of year. You know, not bad at all out there, but there will be showers around, really squally and heavy showers with some thunder and hail possible across some western areas. The south and east looks quite nice, though, with some sunshine. And then as we head our way into Christmas Day, again, some showers around with temperatures on the mild side. It's not till Boxing Day when that cold air comes back.
Times Business sponsors talkTV weather.
My new show is down to earth, it's immediate, absolutely we are shoving home the questions. How are you going to help us through this cost of living crisis? We're on the side of our vibrant viewers.
Good morning and welcome to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham on the eve before Christmas Eve. So I guess I can say with some alacrity, a very Merry Christmas to one and all. Richard Tyson's here with me. We're going to be celebrating what a glorious day it is outside. I can just about see past the window and the rain, which is teeming it down here in London. So if you're trying to get away anywhere, do let us know how you're getting on, because if there are any traffic snarls, we should probably know about them so we can tell everybody else. But it's a good day to be driving and listening, of course, to talkTV and Talk Radio, because this is the one place where you'll get all the news that you need, plus a few other little bits and pieces. We'll be bringing you some proof that I was right once again on Monday to tell you that there was something up with the courier business in this country. We've got some video footage of an every delivery man, a courier, doing something rather suspicious with a package. Many of you called in on Monday to tell me that you tried to get packages out of Every, which is, of course, the new company which used to be known as Hermes. So we'll be playing you that. We'll be telling you why we were right again. We'll be talking about the Albanians that have been kicked out of the country. As somebody said yesterday, there's only 40-odd going today. That still leaves quite a few more to go. Many of them, of course, are actual criminals. Many of them came over on boats as well. So perhaps Suella Braverman has finally started putting something down in writing that she's actually going to stick to. And maybe we will actually finally deport some of these people and we won't see them again. We shall see. We'll be talking, of course, about the problems with the rail strikes. We'll be talking about the problems with all the other strikes that are going on at the moment. We'll talk about the NHS. We'll talk as well to Sebastian Gorka over in America to discover just what it is about the obsession that the Democrats have about trying to stop Donald Trump from running again. I mean, he probably won't win anyway, so why are they making such a fuss about trying to make it impossible for him to do so? We'll also be going to Scotland to talk to Donald MacLeod about the Hogmanay celebrations up there and what Nicola Sturgeon is doing in all sorts of areas, including, of course, the famous story that came out yesterday about the Gender Retransmission Act, or whatever it's called. And we'll be talking about that and whether or not Westminster might actually block it. But most of all, of course, what I do want to tell you, the highlight of the show will be later on. We are bringing back the Perrier Awards, which haven't been on. We used to do them every Friday. We haven't done them for nearly a year. I'm delighted to say that they will be returning today, so you don't want to miss that. That's right near the end of the show. It's all the bloopers and mistakes that other people have made. None of me, of course, because I don't make mistakes, do I? 0344 499 1000. Jodie McGowan will be in with all of that later on in the show. But keep your calls coming to us as well, because we want to hear from you. It is Christmas. I know it's not the greatest Christmas that probably you've ever had. Let's try and have a good one. 0344 499 1000. This is the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. Let's get it on. So it's Friday. It's just after 10 o'clock. Richard Tice is here. A very Merry Christmas to you,
And
Richard.
a very Merry Christmas to you, Mike. And although the weather is pretty grim and gloomy out there, it really is unbelievable. But we've come to the end of the year.
We have.
And what a year it's been. It's been pretty transformational, pretty
Well, it really
extraordinary.
has. I mean, John Rentoul's going to be on in the next hour to talk us through some of the sort of political movements. And I mean, normally it's the sort of political movements you would have over a period of about a decade, but you've had it all squeezed into 1 year.
We literally had it squeezed into a matter of weeks and months. I mean, at one moment there wasn't enough time in the day to talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, I seem to remember you and I sitting here listening to Kwasi Kwarteng's budget, and you saying... there doesn't seem to be much enthusiasm for this on the backbenches, and you were the first one to
Well, once
spot.
again, you see, I was right.
You were.
But the truth was, you see, because I do have a little concern as we come to the end of the year, that you've lost the genuine independence of the Republic of Mike Graham. I think you've become the Tory Republic of Mike Graham. Yes, I do, and I'm very concerned about this.
Right.
So I think that you need to use this Christmas and New Year period.
Yeah.
And one of your New Year's resolutions need to be that you need to re-engage with the independence of the Republic
To be
of Mike
fair,
Graham.
I get accused of being a Tory all the time on Twitter. They were always saying, well, you voted for them. And well, I said, well, actually, I didn't vote for them, and I'm not a Tory. I've never voted Tory in my life.
I know.
So
I know.
where are you getting this from?
Well, you see, the thing is that you are, I think, remarkably trusting and believing in all of the pronouncements that comes out of the government. I mean, you were wrong about the Rwanda scheme, of course, many months ago.
No, I have to stop you there. No, I'm not wrong about something until it's actually happened. It hasn't happened yet, so I can't be wrong about it.
No, but you said it would happen. And
well, it might still happen.
It's got no chance of happening, as you well know.
Well, they've said they're going to carry on with the policy.
Let's agree that you've been wrong for many, many months. It's possible you may be right in years to come.
Listen, but if you're right in the end, then I can't have been wrong, philosophically speaking. But
no,
anyway,
that just doesn't work.
All right. Well, have
So
you got any other evidence to produce?
Well, literally just now you suggested that it was a sign of the competence of the Home Office and Suella Braverman that 42 deportations of Albanians has taken place. But may we just remind you, there's at least another 12 or 1,300 Albanian criminals in our jails.
In our jails, yes.
As well as well over 10,000 Albanians who've illegally crossed the channel, entered the country illegally. So I think that the proof will be in the pudding when actually those are deported as well. Because if you take in other countries around Europe, they've returned them. They've accepted no applications from what is, of course, a safe NATO member.
Yes,
a safe NATO country.
Absolutely right. No, listen, I agree with you, but what I'm saying is it's a good start, which of course it is, isn't it?
It's a start.
Yeah.
It's a start, but it is a tiny start.
Yes.
But
of course, what people have to remember about you is that you also have an agenda far bigger than my agenda, because your agenda is to take over the country.
I don't claim independence.
No, I know. But I do, because I am independent, and you will know that I'm one of your biggest supporters, particularly when it comes to reform, because I think reform should give the Tories a run for their money. I slightly worry, though, that you might split the vote and give it all to Labour. But part of me wants Labour to get in as well.
Well,
so, you know, I am fully independent.
Socialism, as I've said before.
They're both horrible.
And both of those are horrible. So I think there's an opportunity for real change. And
listen,
that's what we're striving for.
I don't know if I told you this, actually. Last Friday, when myself and Kevin O'Sullivan did a show down at Waterloo, a live show, the number of people that came up to me and asked me about you and said, is he going to run a load of candidates? Is he going to really take it seriously?
I will reiterate.
Found myself working as your spokesman, saying, I believe he is. I think he's absolutely he's determined to make an impact this time. And the number of people that said they're going to vote for you is absolutely extraordinary.
Well, that's great to hear. Thank you for that. And just to reiterate, we stand everywhere. We stand absolutely everywhere, except for Northern Ireland, so it's well over 600 seats.
And is there one word? Have you come up with a word yet for the reform? Like if I said to you, what does reform stand for? What does it stand for?
Let's make Britain great.
That's not one word.
No, it's 4 words.
OK.
But you see, they call it inflation in some parts of the country.
Oh, it's not like make Britain great again.
Well, there's also that as well,
yeah.
but we absolutely need to make Britain great, and we need to...
Because there is a sense, isn't there, that nothing works. There's
a sense of gloom, there's a sense that where's the hope that it's worse than the 1970s. I'm still optimistically of the view that actually we can turn this around.
Yeah.
We can get higher wages to people by cutting taxes and daft regulation. We can get to zero waiting lists, which is obviously a huge issue. You've got to reform the NHS. We've got to reform our energy sector so we get cheaper energy, use our own energy treasure, all the things that I've been banging on about throughout the year. And I think more and more people are actually listening and realising. And bluntly, the whole role of government is to make sure that we are a sovereign nation that knows who's coming in and who's going out of the country. You've got to secure your borders. And that's what, unfortunately, this lot have completely and utterly failed to do for a very long time.
Yeah, exactly right. And, of course, the Border Force have not helped in actually making those borders more secure. In fact, if anything, they've made them less secure because the Border Force, who are going on strike at the airport, I assume they're also going on strike down in Dover. Maybe that'll be a good thing because they'll actually stop helping people off the boats and bringing them in.
It's hard to know, really, what is the mindset of the leadership in the Home Office and the Border Force, because with proper leadership, proper will, we would be in a very, very different place.
Yes.
And that's why I say, actually, the Home Office is not fit for purpose, and you've got to set up a whole new Department of Immigration staffed by people who believe in the cause. All of us know, in any walk of life, whatever you're doing, you know, if you want to do a job, do it properly, but you've got to believe in it.
Yes.
You've got to believe in what you're doing.
Right.
And if you do
also,
that, you've got much more chance of succeeding.
And surely you've got to have a goal as well. And it seems to me that, you know, the trouble with this Conservative Party, despite the fact that you think I'm a great supporter of it, which I'm not, I have to hasten to admit there, because I probably am more critical of them than anybody. But the point is that they don't appear to have a vision. They don't appear to have a goal. If you said to Rishi Sunak, what is your goal? It's probably to get past the end of next week without having another catastrophic failure of something.
He reminds me of a managing director of a lowly subsidiary of a big corporation. Yes, he's diligent.
Yeah.
Yes, he works hard, and he gets on top of the numbers. But as you say, where's the optimistic vision?
Right.
What can we buy into? Where's his leadership?
What does he want Britain to be?
What does he want Britain to be? We've got no idea whatsoever. All we get is just basically managed decline from his Speaker-in-Chief, Jeremy Hunt, who just says it's going to be awful. Well, it doesn't need to be awful.
No.
We can make different political choices.
Also,
the sort of things that I've just been touching on.
It's not much of a sales pitch, is it? It's going to be awful. Oh, really? Great. Well, why don't you make it better then?
Well, and that's what we're trying to do. But to do that, you've actually got to fundamentally reform the way that they run the economy, reform the way they run our public services. And I think more and more people are recognising that actually this just cannot go on.
Yeah.
And we all talk a lot about the NHS, the state of our healthcare system, and finally, actually it is now acceptable to say this cannot go on. It has to be fundamentally reformed. Even people in the Labour Party, like Wes Streeting, are actually recognising that. The only people that don't seem to recognise that actually is the government, who seem to think that if you just shovel ever more money, something may get better. Well, actually, all you do is appoint ever more directors of lived experience on 115 grand plus benefits.
Right. I mean, he does have that look about him, doesn't he, Rishi Sunak, that, you know, oh, Christ, the boys from head office are coming down. So we better start, like, sweeping the carpet up and stuff and shove some stuff
It's as though he's waiting for the chief exec to arrive without realising that actually he's supposed to be the chief exec. Yeah,
exactly right. And, you know, when you take over various places, you find all this stuff in the bottom drawer because they haven't dealt with it. And that's kind of the sense that you get, because we're going into the new year. They haven't solved the rail strike, and I don't necessarily blame the government for that. They haven't solved the NHS striking. The Border Force, who knows? Postal Service, who knows? But the thing that amazes me is that all of these strikes are going on around us, and it's not actually making much difference to our lives, I don't think. I mean,
because they've got so bad already, because the truth is so much didn't work.
Yeah.
But the reality is they haven't solved anything.
Right.
They're the cause of many of the problems, and so that's why, in a sense, they've got no solutions and no vision as to how to get us out of it.
No.
We have to be optimistic, though, as we go into the new year. I'm going to be talking early in the new year about what we should be doing, what the government should be doing. This can be turned around.
Yeah.
That, you know, there is the opportunity out there, but they have to make some very different political choices.
Well, I think the economy has proven itself to be actually quite resilient, because despite all of the troubles that we're in, and despite the incredible expense of what many people are having to go through, you know, we're still hanging in there. There's nobody, you know, dropping off the side.
We're hanging in there, Mike, yes, but everybody's
throwing themselves into the lifeboats.
But everybody's poorer because of what this government's done, and frankly, everybody's colder because none of us can afford to put the heating on.
Well, we haven't even talked about energy yet, which we will talk about. It is incredible, but we want to hear from all of you as well. 0344 499 1000, because there's so much to talk about. I mean, I don't even think we've got enough time. We've only got 10 minutes. I think, once again, Mr Tice has been proved wrong with his allegation, an outrageous allegation that I'm no longer independent. Anybody can see that I am, with a brain. So, I mean, it's a slur. Frankly, it's a slur. It's beneath him. I'm not having it, but we'll have more from him coming up in a minute. Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham, right here on Talk TV. Richard Tice is here. We're looking out the window, and already the gloom is beginning to lift, Richard, as we talk
Well, as I put forward the Reform Christmas message, things are lifting.
Will you be doing a Christmas message? Because I think you should.
Yes, there is a Christmas message going out.
Normally you've got the Sunday sermon.
Yeah, it said, no, there'll be a Christmas message that's going out tomorrow, and then a New Year message that will go out on New Year's Eve. So
excellent. Because I'm just reading here that there's some suggestion that Rishi Sunak is now going to put up fuel tax by 12 pence. Fuel duty. I mean, he must be mad, wasn't he?
Well, that is
that's
in the small print of Jeremy Hunt's budget a few weeks ago, which he conveniently forgot to mention in the House of Commons, but was spotted by eagle-eyed economists on the day. And yes, it was just utterly extraordinary. We've got the most expensive fuel, and if that's not bad enough to look forward to, imagine this. This gets the prize today for the Christmas Grinch Award this Friday morning from Kettering Council in Northamptonshire, where they decided that actually Christmas wreaths on the front doors should be taken down, should be banned, should be removed because they represented a fire risk.
What?
Seriously. I mean, we've been having Christmas wreaths since time began.
Right.
And
now they're a fire risk.
Apparently, they're now a fire risk, and therefore they have to be removed from... I mean, it's just unbelievable. Who comes up with this stuff?
I mean, it really is extraordinary that somebody would be bothered to actually walk around and look at these wreaths and go, there's far too many of them. But what about the people selling them? Are they going to prosecute them for selling, dangerous, contaminated sort of fire hazards? It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Absolutely.
This from Anne says, can you ask Richard when he will be putting candidates into communities as very interested, but in North Warwickshire seat held by Craig Tracy, can't see Reform UK getting it? I mean, that's a very specific question, but
the key point is that we stand everywhere at the general election, and we'll stand as many as we can in council elections, but there's many thousands of those. But the focus is on the general election as and when it is. It could be as long as sort of November 24. That's probably the latest they would do it. They wouldn't want to run an election over Christmas. So we'll be ready, and I think that by that time, who knows what state the country is in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, if inflation does come down, and it has been showing signs of doing that and possibly peaking back in sort of November, it may well be that things start to settle down a bit, but things aren't going to get any cheaper suddenly, are they?
That's the point. Even if inflation falls, things don't get cheaper. They just go up in price at a slower rate. And everybody has seen these huge increases, so everybody's having to make adjustments. But what upsets me so much is that so much of it is totally self-inflicted by our own energy policy, and everything comes back down to that.
Well, it does, and that's what we haven't yet talked about, because obviously, we've got the opportunity now to go after more oil and gas in the North Sea. Supposedly that's going to happen, but whether it does happen, I don't know. The fracking argument seems to have been buried by Rishi Sunak.
He's buried that for the moment, and you've now got North Sea oil and gas producers walking away from making further investments because of the completely unpredictable nature of the messaging and the taxation coming out of government.
Because I suppose you wouldn't want to spend billions of pounds exploring for more gas and more oil if you think it's going to all get shut down.
Well, that's right, and they just can't trust a word that this government says. And obviously they've got very real concerns about what's going on in Scotland, so it's not a good investing environment when you just know that the taxation regime is literally just up and down like a yo-yo.
And that is the problem, isn't it? Because the taxes are so high in this country, but we then get told that in other European countries taxes are even higher than that still, and yet people seem quite happy with it. So what's the answer then?
Well, the reality is our taxes are the highest for 70 years, and our public services are the worst that any of us can remember in our lifetime, worse than the depths of the late 1970s. So, look, the answer is that governments can be good at funding things. They're very bad at managing things. And lower taxes means higher growth, and that means higher wages and higher net wages in people's pockets, and that's what you want, so that you can make your own decision about how to spend your cash. You will always spend £1 in your pocket better than some bowler-hatted civil servant spending it on your behalf.
And that is the other problem that we've had in government now for, I would say, at least 15 to 20 years, is the ridiculous waste that goes on in almost every single department. I mean, you and I could walk into any government department today and find something that they were wasting money on.
Yeah, that's it. And whether it's governments, whether it's councils, whether it's the Quangos, wherever, you just see it and you say, why are they wasting money on that? Why are they spending this cash? And, of course, it's our cash. And people, I think, just feel that it's so unnecessary.
Yeah.
And
this is one of the things I find surprising about the unions, because surely the unions would have more sort of punching power if they looked into the NHS, for example. Instead of saying we need another, £1.8 billion from the government, why not go and find the £1.8 billion inside the budget they've already got? That would be a far more sensible endeavour, wouldn't it?
Of course it would, but then you're talking about union leaders who've been presiding over restrictive working practices for decades.
Yeah.
I mean, you take the rail unions, for example. I mean, some of their working practices are literally out from the sort of the dinosaur age.
Yeah.
And they seem very, although they talk a good game, they seem very reluctant actually to embrace it. I said Mick Lynch needs to be careful he doesn't become the modern-day equivalent of Arthur Scargill, and I think that's actually where he's heading.
Well, because trains, in the end, can be automated, and they will end up being automated because it's too much trouble. So all these people complaining that they're not paid enough money, complaining that they have to work more than 3 days a week, and complaining that, they have to actually count travelling to work as part of their leisure time.
That's right. I did also think it's quite interesting that with regard to the nurses' strike, the media may have been guilty of overestimating, actually, the number of nurses who genuinely have been on strike, and likewise the number of ambulance workers. I think the last day of the nurses' strike, it was about 10,000. Well, we're told there were some 300,000 nurses. We know that 40% of trusts actually voted against strike action. So it may be actually there's a more optimistic story that the vast majority of nurses either voted not to go on strike or decided that actually to carry on working. And I think there is there's a positivity around that hasn't been properly reported. Likewise on the ambulance workers. It seems that the vast majority of ambulance workers have carried on working, and that many of those that essentially did take some action, very quickly they left their picket lines when vital emergency calls came through. So I think that's important to get that message over as well.
Oh, absolutely.
That's a positive message.
Well, it is, and I don't wish to be critical of my fellow journalists, but an awful lot of the time when I listen to people interviewing other people on picket lines, I'm always shouting at the radio or the TV, and ask them this, ask them, because so many of the times you hear them saying, oh yes, we're here in support of the nurses. You go, well, so what, you're not a nurse then? So you're here in support of the nurses, so what do you do? They never ask them what they do, and I really think that you're right. I think there's an awful lot of people on these picket lines who are professional picketers, who are holding up the old socialist worker banner, singing and chanting as if they've learned by rote exactly what they're singing and chanting, which doesn't come naturally to people who are just walking off the job. You don't always know what you're supposed to be chanting, do you? But these people do.
And, of course, so more strikes have been announced through the early part of January, I think, by the ambulance workers, by the rail workers, and then there's big questions about Royal Mail. I suspect people will be receiving Christmas parcels and Christmas cards into late January at this stage.
Well, do you know, I don't think I've had any Christmas cards at all.
No, well,
and I mean, that may be more of a reflection on me, but, I mean, nothing's arrived in the post at all. All I've got, a card arrived, it's from my daughter, who doesn't even live with me.
Your last friends have left you this year.
And it's from some wedding she went to, so thanking her for going to a wedding. It's the first card I've had. Thanks very much.
So, but I do think the Royal Mail has got serious questions to answer about its relevance going forward, because there are many other delivery companies, and obviously there's some issues with some of those.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about one today.
And I've heard that story before, actually, and it'd be interesting what listeners and viewers, their own experiences, where you've had a delivery, and you've had a little notification saying it's been delivered, and then you say, well, it hasn't.
No.
And they say it has, and here's the photo, and it may or may not be a photo of your front door, but all of a sudden, either someone's nicked it, or actually they took it back themselves.
Yeah,
very strange things going on.
There was a case the other day of somebody finding a whole pile of presents that had been sent via Every, and they'd all been dumped in a forest somewhere in southwest England.
Yes, and it was unclear whether they'd been opened and the sort of the contents nicked, or whether actually, because they're basically paid per delivery, they're literally just rushing round to basically deliver or apparently deliver as many as possible, go back and be paid on piecework, saying, I've delivered 1,000 parcels, so here's my invoice.
Money? I know, it's absolutely shocking. Listen, we're out of time. We've had so much fun. We've sorted a few things out. Richard, when are you back on the air?
I'm staging a takeover bid of your show on Tuesday morning.
You're doing that a lot lately. He's staging takeover bids all over the place. Right, so he'll be back Tuesday morning. Have a great Christmas, Richard. Thank you very much indeed for everything you've done this year. We'll take your calls. We're talking to Kelly J. Keane coming up next about this ridiculous rule that they've come up with in Scotland about gender recognition acts and all that sort of thing. This is talkTV.
Join me, Ian Collins, every day on talkTV. There is nothing we hate more than hypocrisy. Discussing the big issues. Why was it so hard to establish the deputy leader was at a meeting with her colleagues? The callers: Alan in Grimsby, Tracy in Burton-on-Trent. Dave, thank you very much. Picking apart the big stuff. This simply does not wash. Look who's back under the spotlight.
This is talkTV News.
Good morning, I'm Emily Rose Adams. The head of striking Border Force workers is warning that travellers could face months of disruption unless the government comes forward with a new pay offer. It has more than 1,000 Border Force staff from the PCS union walk out from now until the end of the year, bar the 27th of December, at 6 of Britain's biggest airports. Well, PCS boss Mark Sawatkas told us they wouldn't feel the need to strike if the government would engage with negotiations.
But we've said to the government 3 weeks ago we would not be having strikes if they said there is money on the table and they want to talk to us about how much, who gets what when, as long as it's done urgently. Their response in 3 weeks has not been a single meeting, a single meaningful response in writing, and most importantly, not a single penny for people they know are living in abject poverty. That's completely unacceptable.
NHS chiefs are urging people not to celebrate Christmas with their grandparents this year if they have a cough or cold. And the government is urging people to get the flu vaccine as the number of people in hospital with the virus has increased by 67% in a week. A formal review will be held into how the case of Killamarsh criminal Damien Bendel was handled by probation officers. The 32-year-old was already serving a 24-month suspended sentence for arson when he murdered Terry Harris, her daughter Lacey, son John Paul and Lacey's friend Connie, with all the children aged between 11 and 13. And a panel in the US investigating former President Donald Trump claims he was part of a multi-part conspiracy to overturn his 2020 election defeat. The House of Representatives committee examined the storming of Congress on January the 6th, 2021, and says it would not have happened without Trump. The final report recommends barring the former president from ever running for office again. That's all for now. We'll have more in half an hour.
Good morning and welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on talkTV. The clouds have actually lifted. I mean, it's still looking a bit grey out there, but at least you can actually see the buildings and the streets. It was so dark this morning, it was as if the sun had not risen at all. But it's the 23rd of December, day before Christmas Eve. I can only hope that you're going to be enjoying the Christmas weekend. And if you're not, by all means, try your best to do so and listen in and watch talkTV because we've got a whole host of very, very interesting things. Don't forget, Plank of the Week tonight at 7 p.m. We've also got a Plank of the Year, which will be coming to you throughout the course of the Christmas period. I think the first time it plays is on Christmas Day, so you'll be able to watch that on Sunday. Plenty for us to get our teeth into on the show today. Loads of you want to talk to me about the immigration problem. Lots of you want to talk about the striking scenario. But, of course, the other big story this morning, and it's on the front page of the Daily Mail by hook or by crook, is this one. Ministers threaten to block Sturgeon's gender law. Because up in Scotland, they've been talking for about the last 2 or 3 days, but much longer than that, really, about making it possible for 16-year-olds in Scotland to change gender without medical diagnosis. It's something that has worried an awful lot of parents and something that has worried an awful lot of people. It's sort of split the vote in Scotland, if you like. We're going to talk now, though, to Kelly J. Keane, founder of Standing for Women, because there's a chance, apparently, that despite the fact that Scotland has its own devolved laws on health, that the Westminster government and the Westminster Parliament might step in here and actually say this is a step too far. Kelly J., very good morning to you. Welcome.
Hello, good morning.
I mean, it's a very weird story, this, and I think a lot of people are wondering whether Scotland has kind of lost its collective mind, because there's no apparent reason for doing it, you know, because people who wanted to change their gender could do so before. All they seem to have done is to make it possible to do it faster and younger.
Yeah, I mean, look, even the word gender is a misnomer, and nobody really understands what it is anyway. And if gender, so-called gender, is some internalised sense of self, then I don't understand why you would need surgery to remove body parts in order to change your gender. And in Scotland, they've decided you don't need to do anything at all besides say, this is what I am. And then if you're a convicted rapist even, you can access women's spaces with absolutely no barrier whatsoever. It's absolutely despicable. What an affront to women all across Scotland.
I was listening to Baroness Kennedy this morning. She was talking on the Today programme about this, and she was basically of the opinion that the risk to women from predatory men is far greater outside of this argument than it is inside of it, and that predatory men will be predatory anyway. But she kind of at least eventually had to concede that it might slightly increase the risk of predatory men being able to attack women in women's spaces. But she said it was such a small risk that it was almost negligible.
Well, I find it really interesting. When I used to be very much inspired by Helena Kennedy, and I saw her speak in 2012, and she really ignited the women's rights campaigner in me, and she's such a massive disappointment on this particular issue, and quite frankly, I don't even believe that she thinks the words that she says are true. But when it comes to this differentiation people keep making between, you know, trans and men, as far as I'm concerned, there is absolutely no difference. So it seems just quite preposterous to start saying, well, predatory men won't do this, or predatory men will do that, and trans won't do this, and trans will do that. Let's just talk about the absolute fact that men are people born with XY chromosomes, and those people actually present a greater risk to women. And we have now given some of those people easier access to women's spaces, no matter how they identify or what pattern of behaviour they've ever had before. As far as I'm concerned, if we're not letting all men in, we really shouldn't be letting any men in.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And there are no women that I talk to who have a different opinion to yours. I mean, you know, all the women that I know say exactly that. And so it seems to me that it's a sort of virtue signalling thing to say the complete opposite of that. And as you say, I'm not even sure that people like Baroness Kennedy believe it. I'm not even sure that the people who argue against J.K. Rowling and want to have her, you know, torched and burned at the stake and all of that, I mean, there's the mad sort of section of people who think that that's the way life should be. But most regular, you know, sensible, clear-thinking individuals would agree with you, wouldn't they?
100%. I mean, I'm ashamed to say it's more women than men that seem to go along with this nonsense. I think most men have been in conversations with other men where they're really clear what some men can say and do and think about women. So men are far more likely to oppose this. But as far as Nicola Sturgeon, I think she wants to leave a legacy. I don't necessarily, in the fullness of time, think this will be the legacy that she wants to leave, a woman that destroyed women's rights. But you know, she's not solving anything else, is she? She's not solving poverty. No. She's not solving education. She's not helping the poorest people in Scotland. She's doing some virtue signalling nonsense, which really just only benefits a very tiny handful of men and really doesn't benefit anyone else.
Right. And benefits a handful of men, but also makes it possible for them to do what they can already do, by and large. It's just that they can now do it without having to show any kind of scientific reason for it. And it seems that they can now do it when they're younger, which doesn't seem right to me, because whatever you may think about the arguments on either side of this, surely the sensible course of action is to take as long as possible to decide whether this is what you actually want to do.
Yeah, well, in Scotland they said 16, haven't they? In Spain, with a judge, you can now legally change your sex marker at age 12. So the whole of supposed progressive Western world is going to hell in a handcart. Yeah. It's absolutely insane. And why we would let a 16-year-old change their sex marker but not actually have a tattoo or go and buy a pint of beer in a pub is just, it's just beyond me.
It really is. But I'm not expecting you to be a constitutional expert on this, but there is a situation possibly, though, is there not, where Westminster may be able to block this, and there is some suggestion that that might happen.
Yeah, I think it's called Section 35, so I think if something goes against other sort of more constitutional laws like the Equality Act, then we might be able to block it. I hope we do, but I really hope that this wakes up people in Scotland who seem to have been asleep to the danger of this, and certainly people in England. And what I would like to see is that we repeal the GRA completely, so that we go on the offensive and we don't wait to react to the next level of nonsense. Because if Starmer gets in 2023, 24, I think we're doomed.
Well, I mean, he doesn't know what a woman is. Does he know what a trans woman is?
Well, I think everyone knows that anybody calling himself a trans woman was actually born with male genitals. So
Yes.
I think I couldn't sit here and convince anybody that I was a so-called trans woman. So I think everybody really does know what we're talking about. It's just that maybe you and I are the last people on earth that are prepared to say it, Mike.
Well, then we'll just have to sail off on a boat together into the blue yonder or something and try and find some sensible people. But thank you very much indeed. Have a good Christmas. Nice to talk to you. That's Kelly J. Keane, the founder of Standing for Women. I mean, there is a huge controversy on this story, and I don't really understand why there has to be one. I just don't get it, really. And I suppose people will say, well, that's the problem, isn't it? You just don't get it. Well, no, it's not really the problem, because if Westminster does block this, it will create a huge schism once again between Scotland and England. Nicola Sturgeon, who clearly has found herself incapable of making the independence argument work and has been incapable of trying to get a second referendum, is now obviously just now sort of rolling about trying to find anything that she can get over England. And if she can win this one, she'll consider that to be a major triumph. I don't think it is. 0344 499 1000 is the problem. Lindy Lou says, I absolutely support transgender people who should be treated fairly. The point is that a woman born as a woman tends to be smaller and less physically able and will feel vulnerable. Anyone who cannot see why has never been raped or sexually assaulted. And Natasha says, great conversation with Richard Tice, looking very spruced and suave this morning, Mr. Graham. Well, thank you. Merry Christmas to you and your family. Well, and to you. Merry Christmas to all of you, because it is Christmas. I'm wearing a Christmas tie, which was actually bought for me by my son, so I'm rather proud of that. We will be doing lots more, including proving, once again, that I was right about the Courier business and why it's got something seriously wrong at the heart of it. That's coming next on talkTV. Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. It is the last day of this show before Christmas, of course. We'll be back next week, towards the end of the week. Richard Tice filling in for me after Christmas as well. But plenty going on between now and Christmas Day, so do keep your TVs tuned to Talk TV. And indeed, if you're listening on the radio, to Talk Radio as well, because we will bring you plenty of festive cheer to get you through the weekend, particularly if you're feeling a little bit down in the mouth. And who can blame you? Because it hasn't been what one would describe as a vintage year, has it? We're going to be talking to John Rentoul coming up in a little while about the political year, which has been pretty hardcore, you'd have to say. Pretty extraordinary, considering all of the things that have happened. But coming up later on, the highlight of the year will be the Perrier Awards, which return for the first time in a very long time. I can't even remember the last time we did them, but I'm pretty sure it was very much closer to the start of this year than it is to the end of it. But let me just tell you something else about what we talked about, and I think it was on Monday's show, where we had a remarkable number of calls from all of you very good people out there who have had trouble getting parcels delivered. Our favourite was Dorothy in Ireland, who was sent more than on one occasion a box with nothing in it. She kept sending it back, and they kept sending it back to her with nothing in it. Extraordinary. But an awful lot of people have been telling me that some of the courier companies, Every in particular, haven't been particularly good at finding your address, or having found your address, they then tell you that they've left the package there, they take a picture of the package, and the delivery company says, oh yes, it's been delivered, and you say, well actually no, it hasn't. Well, the Times has now managed to find a little investigation on Every right here, and you can see an Every delivery man delivering a parcel, all right? You can also see quite clearly, he leaves the parcel there, he takes a picture of it, he then comes back and takes the parcel away. Now, this has been an accusation made in the past. This is actual proof of it happening. Every apparently took about a week before they were able to contact the individual concerned, the person whose parcel was nicked, and they finally were able to get rid of the offending Every delivery man and say that they were terribly sorry. He does not represent the 30,000 people that do work for them and who do very good jobs. But if you're waiting for a parcel and you're hoping it's going to arrive today or tomorrow so that you can give Christmas presents to people, you may be out of luck. But the problem is that this is going on. It's an ongoing concern, and there doesn't seem to be really very much that anybody can do about it, because the delivery companies aren't interested. Sometimes the people that you've bought the thing from aren't interested. They say, well, it's the delivery company that was supposed to deliver it. They say they have. We can't send you a refund. We can't send you another package out. You know, something needs to be done, it seems to me, to put a bit more regulation on some of these companies. Because as we heard from Richard Tice earlier, the problem with the post office is that they're on strike half the time anyway, but also their business of delivering parcels is not much better. We've also heard of people finding whole sort of arrays of parcels dumped in various places by Every drivers and by other courier company drivers as well. So if you are waiting for a parcel, do let us know. If you are having trouble dealing with the courier company, also let us know. We had a couple of people last week, earlier this week, telling us that. We will attempt to help you out if we can. 0344 499 1000 is the number. There's an awful lot of you who've got lots to say. Well done, Mike Graham, says Carol. There's the best thing you've said all week. The savings should come from within the pointless NHS posts, six-figure salaries, pay the ones who deserve it. Well, interestingly enough, there's one particular story that we uncovered because somebody tweeted it to me. And if you were expecting, as we say, the strikes to end any time soon, the Royal College of Nurses is looking for a head of media. Apparently, they expect to be very much more in the firing line in the media over the course of 2023. Guess what they're paying for that? Including inner London waiting of £4,611. Now, that tells me that if you work for the RCN, that's what you get. So when you hear people saying, oh, the minimum that nurses get is about 27,000, well, why don't you add the London waiting, 4,611, contract type permanent, head of media, London, 35 hours a week. That's 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. That means you go in at about 9 and you finish at about 4. Is that right? Yeah. Not bad, is it? 65,241 quid. Bargain. Brilliant. Not bad. Deary me. Let's talk to Nigel, who's in London. Hello, Nigel.
Good morning and a Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you too. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks. I think I'm going to apply for that job. It sounds like a nice part-time job for a full-time.
Well, it is, yeah. I mean, you could do all your other stuff around it, couldn't you? You could go in at 10 and work till 5. 10 till 5's not bad, is it?
No, I struck an early Downing Street, then just get in the car, go there, and do something afterwards.
I know.
I rang you about Christmas. You know what? I really think this is going to be a worse Christmas for a lot of people than during pandemic times. And the reason I say that is because, look, you can't get your deliveries, you can't get your posts. Don't go out in case you have an accident or in case you get unwell. You won't get an ambulance. You won't get a nurse. You can't get hold of the cops. What is going wrong with this country?
Well, I mean, it might be an easier question to ask. What is actually going right? I mean, because I've asked this question in the past. You know, can we identify anything that actually works well in this country? The only thing I can think of is talkTV.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. At least you're providing a 24-hour, 24/7...
Well, we're always here. We don't go on strike, which is right. I mean, yes, occasionally we have the odd technical glitch, but that's only to be expected. But basically, there aren't many things that work all the time now, are there?
No, and in reality, one would think that a country which has the word great before it even starts, as Great Britain.
Yes.
I'm sorry to say this, we aren't that great anymore, and we really need to pull our socks up. It's absolutely shocking. And I'll tell you something interesting, and I think you may actually recognise it. I've just spoken to two American friends of mine a couple of days ago, and they said to me they were supposed to be coming here in January for a 5-day mini break to London before they go to Ireland and Scotland. And they said, is it going to be safe to come here? If we get in trouble or anything happens, would we get any medical assistance? I said, well, look, I'm pretty sure you would.
Yes.
But it's having an effect with tourists as well, I think.
I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? Incredible. Because at the end of the day, that's the image that's being purported to exist outside of the UK. You know, you've got Meghan Markle telling everyone in America we're all racist. You've got the news in America probably telling us that there's people dying on the street because everybody's on strike. You know, you can't get anywhere by rail. They won't be able to get into Heathrow because the border force are on strike. You know, it's not a very appealing concept, is it?
No, and it's pouring down with rain as well.
Well, there is that. I mean, I think that's one constant. I mean, I suppose the rain works quite well. That's not bad. Nigel, listen, great work last week. Thanks for taking those pictures for us. And we'll see you soon in the new year. Nigel very kindly came down to our live show last Friday. This time last week, actually, it was. Down in Waterloo, myself and Kevin O'Sullivan. That particular show is going to be available, by the way. If you're a follower of the Thought Police, you should go and do that because it's going to be put out there both in video and audio form. Let's talk to Aaron, who's in Blackpool. Hello, Aaron.
Hello, Mike. Happy Christmas to you.
Yes, happy Christmas as well to you. How are you doing?
Hello there. I just wanted to talk to you about the nurses with the pay situation. I keep on hearing about nurses are struggling and having to use food banks and stuff like that. Now, for me personally, obviously I've never worked in the nursing industry, but for those that are struggling, I would say they are the sort of nurses that are single and having to run the house on their own because of the wages that are on. Not to be stereotypical, but let's just look at it from another point of view. If someone is on minimum wage and they're living on their own, they would not be able to even run a home. They would probably have to house share, because with the inflation catching up with them. So for me, it's like they're being a bit self-centred, just looking after themselves, not thinking about other people.
Yes.
Because people that are on minimum wage, like myself, we can't afford nice things at the minute. We can't afford this and that.
Right.
I have got a partner that also works. So looking at it from that point of view, when you've got nurses that say they're struggling, that for me pulls down to personal circumstances. That's not the doctor's fault.
No, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, a lot of people... Yeah, no, a lot of people who would otherwise have sort of sympathy with striking workers are looking at this particular situation and saying, well, they're not the worst paid people in Britain by any stretch of the imagination.
No, they're not. No.
They've got very good benefits. They've got very good pension contributions that come in from the central source, from their employer. And quite frankly, they have a 37.5-hour week for which, if they work over that, they get extra money. So, there's an awful lot of people working in jobs where they get a lot less than the nurses do, and less than the RMT strikers do, less than the post office workers as well. It's not a very fair situation.
Yeah, and if they're able to afford to strike, is that not a little bit self-explanatory as well?
Well, I think so.
If they, and there's one more point I wanted to make off the nursing, is the reef situation, which I find hilarious. They're not having, you can't have wreaths on your front door because they might catch fire. But what about the Christmas trees you've got inside the home that's with electric lights?
It's a good point. I mean, you'd think that might be more of a fire risk than a wreath outside with no lights on it at all.
You would think, You would think so, wouldn't you? This country's gone bonkers.
It really has. You're absolutely right. Aaron, thank you very much indeed. Aaron there in Blackpool talking about that. Now, some breaking news. The latest from the Royal College of Nursing, this is. Unless negotiations are opened, RCN members will strike again, it says here, on the 18th and 19th of January 2023. The action will take place at more NHS employers in England than happened this month, increasing from 44 to 55 trusts, or by 25%. Well, of course, the interesting thing about the number of people who voted in this action and the number of trusts that voted to strike is that there was an awful lot of National Health Trusts that did not vote to strike, and an awful lot of nurses who did not vote to strike, and an awful lot of nurses who may have voted to strike but who also refused to walk out on the job. So I think if it goes to the 18th and 19th of January and the government hasn't found some compromise in terms of pay and in terms of what it is that these people want, then at the end of the day, I think people's patience will have run out. I think people who are ordinary, hard-working citizens of this country will say, do you know what, guys? Just accept what you've been offered and move on and fight another day, because at the end of the day, you're making no friends, you're putting people's lives in danger, and you're putting people's lives at risk. And if it's the 18th and the 19th of January, don't forget, that's 2 days. That means that if you've got any kind of operation scheduled, probably for a week either side of that, you will be told not to bother. Now, I don't understand how anybody who is in the medical business and who is involved in caring for people would actually deliberately put those people's lives at risk. Why would you? If you're an actual nurse who believes in what you do, how could you? It's barbaric. It's simple as that. This is talkTV.
On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is talkTV. talkTV News at 11.
Good morning, I'm Emily Rose Adams. Rishi Sunak says he's sad and disappointed as severe travel disruption threatens to cause chaos to people's Christmas plans. It says more than 1,000 Border Force staff from the PCS union walk out from now until the end of the year, bar the 27th of December, at 6 of Britain's biggest airports. Well, PCS boss Mark Sawatka's told us they wouldn't feel the need to strike if the government would engage with pay negotiations.
But we said to the government 3 weeks ago, we would not be having strikes if they said there is money on the table and they want to talk to us about how much, who gets what when, as long as it's done urgently. Their response in 3 weeks has not been a single meeting, a single meaningful response in writing, and most importantly, not a single penny for people they know are living in abject poverty. That's completely unacceptable.
Meanwhile, there's further disruption today with a series of localised strikes on Britain's rail networks. It means that motorists could face one of the busiest days of the year on the roads. But one woman's told us that she backs striking workers, even though they've put her Christmas plans into chaos.
I think what we need to look at as a country is our infrastructure is crumbling and workers are out on strike because they're not being listened to, because they're being overworked, because they're under mental stress. And I think our government's to blame, not the strikers.
And some breaking news in the last few moments. The Royal College of Nursing says that nurses in England will strike again on January the 18th and the 19th, unless discussions with the government over pay are reopened. In other news, an inquest heard the provisional cause of death of 4 people who died when a boat capsized in the Channel on December the 14th is drowning. The coroner said the victims are still unidentified, but police say it is possible that 2 were Afghan nationals and the others were Senegalese. The inquest has been suspended amid an ongoing police investigation. NHS chiefs are urging people not to celebrate Christmas with their grandparents this year if they have a cough or cold. And the government's urging people to get the flu vaccine as the number of people in hospital with the virus has increased by 67% in a week. A panel in the US investigating former President Donald Trump claims he was part of a multi-part conspiracy to overturn his 2020 election defeat. The House of Representatives Committee examined the storming of Congress on January the 6th, 2021, and says it would not have happened without Trump. The final report recommends barring the former president from ever running for office again. And England World Cup winner George Cohen has died at the age of 83. His former club Fulham have announced. The right-back played in the side that won the World Cup at Wembley in 1966 and was vice-captain in the 4-2 victory over West Germany in the final. And now time for today's weather with Isabel Lang.
Times Business sponsors talkTV weather.
Hello. There's a 3-way split in the weather today. Central areas look really wet and dull as well. And this frontal system will only slowly track its way up into northern England later. Some snow for some of the higher routes. Chilly to the north, maybe a little bit of wintriness there over higher ground. And in the south, it'll brighten up after that wet start. And it will feel mild, particularly in the sunshine in the afternoon, with highs of around 11 or 12 Celsius. That wet weather gradually pushes its way up into Scotland. It does eventually take some mild air right up into the north for the start of Christmas Eve, but it takes its time, engaging in the cold air for a while, giving some snow, particularly north of the central belt. Those high routes could be quite snowy for a few hours, and then we'll find that gradually turns back to rain as the mild air creeps north. Further to the south, it'll be a mild, but not as murky a night, thankfully. Now, into Christmas Eve, temperatures really quite high for the time of year. You know, not bad at all out there, but there will be showers around, really squally and heavy showers with some thunder and hail possible across some western areas. The south and east looks quite nice, though, with some sunshine. And then as we head our way into Christmas Day, again, some showers around with temperatures on the mild side. It's not till Boxing Day when that cold air comes back.
Times Business sponsors talkTV weather.
Vanessa Phelps. Join me every weekday from 4 till 7 on talkTV.
Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here. It's a Christmassy show today because it is, of course, practically Christmas Eve tomorrow, Christmas Day on Sunday, of course. Loads and loads of great television for you to watch here on talkTV. Starting tonight at 7 p.m, Plank of the Week, the Christmas special. That's on, it's going to be, of course, festooned with all sorts of tinsel, with all sorts of snow, people wearing Christmas hats. It's a great event that you should watch at 7 p.m. At 8 p.m, the Talk Royal Special. I think I'm in that as well. So you'll have a double dose of me tonight, if that's what you're looking for. Much to do in the course of the next couple of hours, though. John Rentoul coming up next. We're going to have a look back at the year in politics. It has been a pretty traumatic one. I've also got a great text here, which has come in from an Every driver, which I'm going to read to you in a moment as well. Also, of course, we will be talking more about what Richard Tice said about why it is that we are seemingly at a sort of crossroads. I've got some more breaking news for the GMB union has called off the ambulance strike for next week. They say that the second day of the ambulance strike, which was planned for next week, is going to be changed and moved instead to the 11th of January. So you might say that that is at least some form of recognition that that is not the greatest time to do it around Christmas time. The members were expected to walk out on the 28th of December, but they're going to say now, the GMB, the public will be able to enjoy their Christmas without having any additional anxiety. And I think that at least shows that the union have got a heart, unlike some of the other unions who are striking that we could mention. The RMT, for example, who have basically decided to strike not only on Christmas Eve, but another strike following that all the way through pretty much to Boxing Day, when there aren't really any trains anyway, and there aren't really going to be any trains the first week of January either, so it's all pretty awful. Also, you might have heard in the news there, the England World Cup hero George Cohen, the vice-captain of the 1966 World Cup winning team, has died at the age of 83, leaving Bobby Charlton and Geoff Hurst as the only surviving members of Alf Ramsey's starting 11. And so there we'll bring you news on that, I'm sure, and there'll be more on Talk Sport on that. Let me just read you this from an Every driver called James, who has sent this in. Mike, I'm currently out delivering for Every. It's definitely as bad as people say. In fact, I'd say it's worse. Couriers having to sort their rounds in the pouring rain, damaged packages, awful terms and conditions. Every are owned by a US equity firm and work to screw costs and pay as much as they can legally get away with. It would need much more than a text to explain it all. Most of the local couriers are earning less each year for delivering more items. They are obviously characters with zero respect for people's items in some cases. However, because of the pay structure, the couriers don't earn if they can't deliver a parcel. I'd ask people to take a long, hard look at what arrangements they provide for a courier to deliver their item if they're not at home. The answer is sadly most do nothing, which is why items get left in dodgy and unsafe places. Not an excuse, I know, but if they have to go back to that address the next day to deliver it, then their reward for delivering on the second day is halved. Couriers are earning less than the cost of a first-class stamp to deliver a parcel. Every will give the usual excuse of it being isolated incidents. Their spokespeople cannot be taken at their word. Well, I think everybody knows that if you do have a pain-free sort of delivery from a courier, you're probably lucky. But occasionally things go wrong. And it's more than occasionally, I think. We'll come back to that, and we'll come back to some more of your texts and tweets and your phone calls as well. Right now, though, let's say a very good morning to John Rentoul, Chief Political Commentator from The Independent. And as I've said with a lot of people, John, let me just start off by thanking you for your sterling efforts this year, joining The Independent Republic almost on a weekly basis, giving us a great deal of things to think about, sometimes disagreeing with me, but always in a pleasant way. And it has been probably one of the most remarkable political years of either of our careers, hasn't it?
Well, indeed. Happy Eve of Christmas Eve,
yes,
Mike.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I haven't fiddled with my Zoom controls to get the magic snow on my background.
Yes, well, we've been claiming that we should be doing. We wanted to do this. We finally managed to get it working for the final day of the show, the last show before Christmas. So not before time. Before we come to you, let's have a look at some of the action that we saw over the course of the last 12 months.
It is clearly now the will of the Parliamentary Conservative Party that there should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new Prime Minister. I want to thank everybody here and hasta la vista, baby. Thank you.
I give notice that Liz Truss is elected as the leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. We'll come up on stage.
I have a bold plan to grow the economy through tax cuts and reform.
We need a new approach for a new era, focused on growth.
Given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning.
I've just been to Buckingham Palace and accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government in his name.
I mean, when you look at it in that sort of format, John, it looks almost like you've speeded up the last decade, doesn't it? And you've suddenly got, you can't quite believe how quickly all that happened.
It was, I mean, looking back on it, it was an extraordinary year. Because at the start of the year, I mean, we knew Boris Johnson was in trouble. But the assumption was that if he got into too deep trouble, the Conservatives could just change leader and they'd sort out the problem. But of course, it didn't work out like that. I mean, nobody saw Liz. Well, we saw Liz Truss coming, and I'm afraid, the consensus in Westminster was that she was going to blow herself up and destroy her campaign. Which happened, but it didn't happen until after she'd won it, which was the extraordinary thing.
Yes, I mean, the only reason I thought and expected her to beat Rishi Sunak was because just knowing from what the people that call this show say and from what the people that are members of the Conservative Party were telling me, they just didn't like Rishi Sunak because they felt that he had stabbed Boris Johnson in the back and they would rather have anybody but him.
Yeah, absolutely, and they thought he was some kind of Romaniac socialist who put up taxes to the highest level in 70 years. Utterly, I mean, how he managed to throw away his two huge assets, which are that he actually voted leave, and that he's incredibly competent and pays attention to detail.
Yeah,
and yet he managed to come across as a sort of left-wing technocrat.
Right. I mean, I wonder if that's something to do with the art of campaigning, because, Boris Johnson is almost the opposite to that, isn't he? Brilliant at campaigning, but once he gets in, doesn't actually do very much of anything.
No, absolutely. And Liz Truss turned out to be quite a good campaigner, quite a ruthless campaigner in telling Conservative Party members what they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Even though she voted Remain, they idolised her as some kind of Brexiteer, tax-cutting libertarian.
Yeah.
And look where it got us.
Well, quite. And in the 12 months, it would seem to me that the Conservative Party has sort of damaged itself, possibly, irrevocably, below the waterline, because I don't think anybody now with an honest face can say what the Conservatives stand for.
Well, no, they can. They stand for winning elections, basically. And
is that it?
Well, that'll do. Rishi Sunak's hoping that a sort of basic level of competence over the next 18 months will turn the tide. I mean, most people don't think that's likely to happen. I mean, the assumption in Westminster is that Keir Starmer is going to be Prime Minister in 2024. But, we've got a long way to go. We've got a whole year before we hit election year. And anything can happen. And as you know, that little compilation just showed, the most remarkable things can happen in British politics.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm definitely not one of those who thinks that Keir Starmer is a shoo-in at all, because apart from anything else, Labour still has an awful lot of road to travel, it seems to me, in terms of what it is that Labour stands for and what it is that Labour would do. We've had a couple of hints in recent weeks, but still there's an awful lot we don't really know about what Labour Party policy in government would be.
Well, there isn't much difference, to be absolutely honest, between what Keir Starmer's proposing and what the current government is doing. But the question is absolutely what you've just said, Mike, which is, has the Conservative Party just destroyed its credibility with the voters irrevocably, or is there a way back? And neither of us knows the answer to that.
No, exactly right. And in terms of Scotland, I suppose we could say that there's been some movement there. We've had Nicola Sturgeon being as difficult as she could be and trying to, kind of harangue and harass the Westminster Parliament to give her a second referendum. Not managed to do that. And I don't particularly want to get into the ins and outs of this Gender Recognition Act again. We've already talked about that. But it seems to me this is her sort of second go at the Westminster government, because if Westminster tries to block that could be an interesting bun fight, couldn't it?
Well, it could, except that I'm not sure that one's going to work out quite so well for her. I mean, I think she got a big bounce in the opinion polls when the Supreme Court ruled that she didn't have the power to call the second referendum, because that appeared to be the sort of London establishment ganging up against the SNP.
Right.
But this gender recognition bill is something that I'm not sure most Scottish people approve of, and therefore, if the London government blocks it, I'm not sure it'll have quite the effect that Nicola Sturgeon hopes.
No, quite. And of course, the other thing that's still hanging around is very much the Northern Ireland Protocol, which we've had another sort of 12 months of not solving. I don't get the sense that that's in any way a priority for Rishi Sunak in the new year, do you?
Well, no, I thought it was a priority because I think he takes a sort of hyper-rationalist view that this ought to be soluble, and that if he could solve it, it would do him a power of good. I'm not sure if either of those is true. I mean, if he did solve it, I think most people would just shrug and move on. But that's not going to stop him trying. But the question is whether the DUP actually has any interest in solving it. I mean, I think the DUP doesn't actually mind not having a functioning devolved government in Belfast.
Yeah. Well, as ever, everything sort of limps along, doesn't it? I mean, I suppose the big story will be in the next few months what happens with these strikes, what happens with the government's negotiations with these various public sector unions. Will it come to a sort of fight to the death? Will it lead to an election? Will it lead to the collapse of the economy? At the moment, the damage is limited, it seems to me.
Yeah, no, that's right. And if inflation has turned, then I think the government can see a way out of it. Very interesting clip that Rishi Sunak's just done on TV, just in the past half an hour or so, in which he didn't rule out a one-off cash payment for nurses, which I think could be the way through this. I mean, he wouldn't set a precedent, he wouldn't raise their basic pay. But a one-off cash payment just to say, look, I recognise that things are incredibly difficult and you've fallen behind inflation temporarily. So here you are.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's interesting because I thought Number 10 was ruling that out when it seemed that Steve Barclay was suggesting it. But we now have Rishi Sunak actually on camera not ruling it out.
Yes.
That's quite a hopeful sign.
Well, yeah, and also GMB just announcing that they're not going to strike with the ambulances on the 28th of December, and they're going to move that into January, which is also, you'd have to say, a possible sign of some, some willingness at least to at least not make it as difficult as possible.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, if there is a willingness to compromise on both sides, then I think we could be getting somewhere. I mean, Rishi Sunak wants to distinguish between the unreasonable trade union demands, which include the nurses' demand for 19%. But I mean, nobody thinks the nurses have actually really want 19%. I mean,
but I mean, that's not much of an argument, is it? I mean, when the nurses' union representatives say, well, of course, it's just a negotiating position, we go, well, if it's just a negotiating position, then get lower. Then start your negotiating position where somebody might actually believe it's a bit more reasonable, like starting at 13% or something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think they did make a tactical mistake there. But I mean, the opinion poll suggests that the nurses still have absolutely solid public support, and actually it's increasing in recent days. But the government wants to separate them from the RMT and the transport workers because I think they suspect that there's less public support for them.
Right. And if I know you don't like to look into your crystal ball, but if we're sitting here this time next year.
It's kind of my job, Mike.
Well, I know it is, but, I don't like to put you on the spot unless you're willing to be put there. I mean, this time next year, are we in a better place, do you think?
Well, I think so. I mean, I've gone on the record saying, actually, I think Rishi Sunak's going to win the next election, which is a somewhat dangerous position to take because it's counter to the conventional wisdom. Yeah. But I just think things are going to happen, and I'm not sure that Keir Starmer has the kind of link to the British public that he needs in order to make sure that when they come to a choice between alternative governments, they'll go for him. But I mean, it may be that the feeling that it's time for a change will be too strong. But as I say, we've got a long way to go.
People have short memories as well. If things get a bit better, you never know what happens. John, listen, thanks again for the year. Have a lovely Christmas. We'll speak to you in the new year, I'm sure. John Rentoul from The Independent there, chief political commentator, thinks that Rishi Sunak will actually win the next election. I think you could be right, We're going to take some calls because lots of you want to talk to me. I want to talk to you as well. The snow's falling behind me. Outside, the sky's lifting. It's looking great. It's a nice day. Who knew? This is Talk TV. Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. It is the season to be jolly. It is Christmas. It is lighter out there than it was this morning. It was very, very dark when I came out of the house just around about 8 o'clock this morning. The skies were absolutely bucketing down with rain. It seems to have brightened up quite significantly, though. So wherever you are in Britain or in the world, let's hope that you have a decent weekend and you can enjoy the Christmas as much as you can. Do let us know what you're up to. Do let us know if you've hit any snags on the travel front as well, because obviously if you tell us, we can tell everybody else. Sebastian Gorka's coming up at midday. He's going to tell us all about what's going on. There's a huge weather warning in the United States of America because they've got a massive storm heading their way. But more importantly, he's going to tell us about the massive storm afflicting one Donald Trump, who still seems to be enemy number one for the Democrats. They seem to be convinced that they need to stop him from ever gaining an office of any kind of electoral nature again. But right now, let's talk about the wokists, because Professor John Marenbund is an honorary professor of medieval philosophy at Cambridge University. Now, you can't say that we do not offer a very broad church here at the Independent Republic of Mike Graham, and unusually for a professor at Cambridge in particular, he's not that woke. Professor, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's delightful to see you quoted in the papers yesterday about the fact that so much of academia now and so many academics are kind of, you know, being almost antediluvian and trying to kill off education and trying to make people sort of follow down these narrow tunnels of groupthink where they're not encouraged to actually examine themselves or even just explore the intellectual world before them. What's going on?
Well, yes, what is? I mean, I think you put it very well. I can't actually think of somebody summarising in a sentence or two better what universities should be doing. And alas, they're, to a great extent, failing to do that. I think especially in the arts and humanities. I think that science, maths, you're much better off. There's something which people clearly have to learn, techniques they have to master, and that works. But I think that a lot has been going wrong in the arts and humanities.
And what do you think the reason is for it? Because we see it every day. There's sort of examples of it. We saw Stanford University coming out with these words that we shouldn't be using anymore and phrases that should be consigned to the dustbin of history, like burying the hatchet and stuff like this. I mean, what's driving it, do you think?
Well, I suppose, I mean, it's driven by underlying intellectual ideas, that a certain way of thinking has captured the universities, and indeed has captured a lot of the media. Obviously, you're an exception, but
we certainly are.
If you look on the BBC, if you read The Guardian, or perhaps even The Times, you will find this, and it's very difficult to have different views and to express different views in a university context. And on the one hand, there are these terrible instances of people actually being cancelled or forced out of their jobs. And there's going to be legislation to try to make that more difficult. But it doesn't get back to the underlying problem, that even if nothing as bad as that happens to you, if you think differently, you're going to be made to feel as if you're doing something stupid, something strange. And I mean, you ask, why does this happen? Well, one of the reasons is it's self-perpetuating. If you're a bright young person, you're thinking about an academic career, if you feel that you're going to be plunged into an atmosphere where you can't say what you think, because you happen to think differently from the group, you're going to decide on something else. So I think that the people who might dissent are forced out of the universities.
Right. And some people have been forced out of universities. And I mean, are there people like yourself? Because, I mean, many people are frightened to speak out about it, aren't they? For fear of the repercussions, for fear of being cancelled. I mean, do you feel somehow a bit of an isolationist at Cambridge there?
Well, where I've been, which is Trinity College, has, I think, until recently, and I fear perhaps it may not be the case now, but it has been a place where, I mean, it's not people who think like me are still much in the minority, but there's been a general willingness to accept different opinions in quite a constructive way, and so I've been protected to a considerable degree. And I think, and the faculty that I've had most to do with, the philosophy faculty, I think is quite good in that way. I think some of the philosophers who thought about this, even if their views are very different, are more tolerant than many.
Yes.
And then, of course, Arif Ahmed, who's one of the great campaigners for this, happens to be a member of the philosophy faculty, a professor there. Now, it's not that his views are usual, but I think that I think there is a tradition in that faculty of balanced thinking, which helps very much in these circumstances.
Yes.
But in the university as a whole, I do feel isolated.
Well, it's a relief to know, because philosophy is one area where you would expect people to be absolutely tolerant of other people's optional opinions, because otherwise you wouldn't really have much to discuss, would you? If you had, like, people saying, well, there's only really one philosophy of life and there's only one path to follow. You know, if you sort of did that English thing where you talk about great works of literature actually now being possibly harmful to people because of the topics and the nature of those topics, and because of the characters and some of the plots, they're all terribly dangerous and harmful. You know, I mean, you wouldn't get anywhere, would you?
No, well, that's right. And, of course, that is happening in English and in history, which are both much bigger subjects.
Yeah.
And we've seen very strange things in classics, which you might think would be proof against these. And if you can remember the business a year and a half ago where people were upset that they had this collection of plaster casts, and the plaster casts are white. And that was thought to be terribly bad because he had all these white...
I mean, it beggars belief. Listen, Professor, we must get you on some more in the new year because I'd love to talk to you about this at length. But we don't have time today because it's a Christmas show. It's all a bit curtailed. But lovely to talk to you. Have a lovely Christmas and feel free to say that to as many people as possible. Honorary Professor of Medieval Philosophy. What a splendid man. John Marinburn. We're going to be making friends with him, I think, in the new year. This is Talk TV. Coming at 7 p.m. on Friday, it's time for Plank of the Week. That's right, it's when we decide who has been the biggest plank this week. Has it been a politician? Has it been a member of the royal family? Or possibly two? Has it been a football team? Has it been an entire country? We will bring you the nominations. I will bring you the actual plank, and the prize is right in front of me here. Don't forget, it's Talk TV, it's me, Mike Graham, and a gorgeous panel of great guests. It's all here. It's 7 p.m. on Friday.
This is Talk TV News.
Good morning, I'm Emily Rose Adams. The Royal College of Nursing says nurses in England will strike again on January the 18th and 19th unless discussions with the government over pay are reopened. It's after 21,000 nurses walked out over 2 days this month, but unions say more hospital trusts will take part in the next round of strikes. And that's as the GMB union has also just announced that ambulance strikes planned for next week have been called off after amazing public support. Union bosses said, "We know the public will appreciate being able to enjoy Christmas without any additional anxiety. They support us and we support them." Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak says he's sad and disappointed as severe travel disruption threatens to cause chaos to people's Christmas plans. It says more than 1,000 Border Force staff from the PCS union walk out from now until the end of the year, bar the 27th of December, at 6 of Britain's biggest airports. Well, PCS boss Mark Sawatka's told us they wouldn't feel the need to strike if the government would engage with pay negotiations.
But we've said to the government 3 weeks ago we would not be having strikes if they said there is money on the table and they want to talk to us about how much, who gets what when, as long as it's done urgently. Their response in 3 weeks has not been a single meeting, a single meaningful response in writing, and most importantly, not a single penny for people they know are living in abject poverty. That's completely unacceptable.
Meanwhile, there's further disruption today with a series of localised strikes on Britain's rail networks. It means motorists could face one of the busiest days of the year on the roads. And England World Cup winner George Cohen's died at the age of 83. His former club Fulham have announced. The right-back played in the side that won the World Cup at Wembley in 1966 and was vice-captain in the 4-2 victory over West Germany in the final. That's all for now. We'll have more in half an hour.
Welcome back to the Independent Republican Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. We will get some calls on. We will get them very soon, I promise you. We've got Sebastian Gorka coming up very soon at midday to tell us what's going on in the United States of America. We're going to Scotland in a moment to talk to Donald MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod. We'll find out what's going on with him. John from Romford says this. Visited my mum in hospital. Now, this is a bit unfair, so I don't want you to take it too seriously, but it's supposed to cheer you up. Visited my mum in hospital yesterday, and the only strike the nurses should be on is a hunger strike. Sorry. Listen, we're trying to cheer people up, OK? Forgive me if you think that's a bit over the top, you know. I'm sorry. I apologise in the retrospect. Let's talk to Donald MacLeod, columnist at the Herald, occasional columnist at the Herald, I think we now call him, because he's a very busy man trying to make ends meet, trying to not only make hospitality work in Scotland against all of the odds, but also the new owner of a couple of campsites up there. I hope the weather's not like it is here, because you wouldn't fancy your time under a canvas today. Donald, very Merry Christmas to you, sir.
I know, happy Christmas to you. A cool you, as they say. Here, I'll just do this at the beginning. There we go. Merry Christmas. There we go.
Very good. Now,
I love that joke, by the way.
It's not bad, is it?
Here's when I get trapped in a snow globe factory overnight. I'm okay, but just a little shaking.
Now, listen, your sound is a bit iffy. Have you got something weird going on? What's happening?
Well, my sound.
Yeah, the sound.
Yeah. Oh, do you want me to switch this off?
Well, maybe. Try switching it off. Yeah, it might be better. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, right. That's the...
That might be
horribly wrong.
If it goes horribly wrong, don't worry. We'll get back to you. How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, well, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's a lot better, yeah. That's much better.
I see these bloody things, you know. they're meant to work, and they'd never work for me. I don't know what it is.
I don't know. No, listen, I know sometimes they're better, sometimes they're worse. Anyway, let's talk about Scotland. I mean, we're not going to talk about the transgender stuff, you'll be glad to know, because we've done all that already. But
I just wrote a whole lot of notes in that.
Well, you can tell me what you think if you like, but I can imagine what your wife thinks about it.
Well, my wife and many of her friends just think it's disgraceful. It's disgusting. And it's going to lose a lot of votes, not so much for the SNP, but for Labour, who also voted for it as well. Labour, Anna Sarwar is doing a very good job up here.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they seem to collapse under with this gender recognition bill. But I must say, it was Holyrood became Holyrood yesterday. Have you seen this one?
I saw that there was a lot of people shouting.
Well, she stood up. This female protester stood up and accused the government of being terrible people, not decent, and not respecting the rights of women. Then lifted their skirt up and showed a mound of false pubic hair and went, "If you can be obscene, so can I."
Very good. Goodness me. Well, until that moment, my favourite bit of the whole proceedings was when the first day that they were talking about it and debating it, that they did it for so long that the lights went out. I mean, who has a parliament building with lights that go out automatically? I mean, who does that?
Only in Scotland. I mean, like that would it be fiddling the meter.
I mean, the lights are on, but there's nobody home. But let's talk about the business of business, because, this is a busy time of year, should be a busy time of year for you. I presume Hogmanay is going ahead finally in Edinburgh this year, which it hasn't done, I don't think, for the last couple of years. But your business relies on footfall, relies on people. You've got train strikes, you've got, all kinds of things making it difficult for people. What's the latest situation for what you can do?
Well, I was out in my office Christmas party yesterday, and I left early because I've got another round of colds.
Yeah.
3 times I've come down with a cold in about 3 months. I think the immune system's shot to pieces. The 3 years worth of disease and viruses are hitting us all at the moment. But more important, when I was in the town, it was quieter, a lot quieter.
Right.
I mean, Glasgow, it's usually buzzing at Christmas, but the pubs were quieter. You still can't get taxis till stupid o'clock in the morning.
Right.
There's no trains, as you know. So people are coming in and then leaving early before the trains stop.
Right.
And not hanging about. So it's desperate times, I think, for many people. The Garage and the Cat House, they do well. They're iconic venues and they do okay. But many places are just not getting the business. And particularly a lot of restaurants, they're suffering badly, and I really feel for them. And I think in January, when the VAT bills come round, there's going to be so many businesses up and down, not just in Scotland, up and down the UK, are going to be put out of business. Here's a laugh, we'll try and keep it a wee bit funny. The week I took over my campsite in Aviemore, in the Cairngorms, I went and visited it. It was lovely, beautiful, everything you could want it to be. Hi, I say to everybody, and then leave. 2 days later, I couldn't get over because of the snow. 4 feet of snow sat in that campsite.
4 feet, blimey.
4 feet. So my manager, Gavin, was out in his wee snowplow. By the time he'd finished, it pulled up again.
Right.
So, it's exciting times up there, and 1,000 are booked in for Hogmanay. So I just hope it doesn't come down to another 4 feet.
Yeah, because there's meant to be some more snow coming up there, isn't there?
Yes, there's usually snow up there, but it depends if Nicola Sturgeon breathes on it. There might not happen there. But, it's exciting times that way, and hopefully another one comes online in January.
You might have to get some of those, those like jet skis that you get for snowmobiles. You get some of those up there. I might come up for that.
Oh my God! As long as they're electric powered, the minute they start pumping out diesel up there, they all start freaking out.
Oh, exactly right. But But I mean, talk to us about the year you've had as well, because, sort of live music, don't forget, this time last year we were kind of in the thick of it, weren't we? Because I remember I was supposed to go to New York. They ended up putting new restrictions on the flights, and you had to take tests before you came back, so we didn't go. Chris Whitty came out and told everybody not to have Christmas parties. And it was only last year that we were still in this.
I know, it hasn't time flown, and thankfully it has very quickly. The last Christmas was an absolute disaster for the hospitality sector and event sector and tourism sector in Scotland. it cost billions for Nicholas when they took fright over Omicron and closed everybody down, and it was like a dripping, nasty dripping insidious feed into shutting us down.
Yeah.
Putting out rumours that Omicron was very, very deadly and very, very dangerous, and people started to hibernate again. And then they brought in, they crunched it. They closed Scotland for Hogmanay, which was just like the Scottish National Party, the Party for Scotland, closed down Scotland.
Yeah.
I mean, that's disgraceful. And it's taken a long time for us to get back together. And of course, now, through that year, it's one of the Grinch shut us down. Then we've had one roadmap up here for four different roadmaps. We just go our own way. Then we've had the witches' pardons. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we pardon witches, apparently. Oh. Then we had the Easter flight disruptions, which hit us. Then, of course, we have the ferry disasters.
Oh, yeah.
We can't get ferries to the islands. We've had the office parking levy thrown at us. We've spent, I think it was £250,000 sending the First Minister and various other ministers to COP27 in Egypt. Why, I don't know. We've had a bin strike. Remember the bin strike?
I remember that, yeah. In Edinburgh, yeah, it was stinking.
I mean, I'm thinking, these are all the bad things. I'm trying to think of all the good. The good things was live music did come back in the summer.
Right.
And it came back in a big way. Transmit, the bandstand, Kiln Grove Bands, that was absolutely fantastic. And so that was good. But what's been happening again, because of the strikes, definitely the RTA should be pulled aside. I don't know. It's terrible. And because a lot of people have bought tickets for shows, they can't get in and going back. So in this year we went the depression all the way up, down again. I'm determined.
Well, let's hope that 2023 is a bit better, because it wasn't great. But listen, Donald, I've got to run. Have a great Christmas. I'll see you in the new year. You're coming down to do Plank of the Week, I think, in the first week of January. So if all goes well, if you can get here, of course that is, because there's no trains of any type whatsoever. Donald McLeod, MBE, of course, talking to us about his year up in Scotland. Coming next, we are going to take some calls. We're going to give you a little preview of Plank of the Week, and we're also going to find out what the latest is on the travel front as well. This is Talk TV. Welcome back to the Independent Republican Mike Graham right here on Talk TV, with you all the way through until 1 o'clock, of course, when it is time for Russell Quirk, who's sitting in for Ian Collins, and then Kevin O'Sullivan, of course, from 4. 7 o'clock tonight is Plank of the Week time. We'll play you a little bit of that in a moment, but we've just got some more breaking news here this morning. It seems that several people have been injured after a shooting attack in Paris. It's happening, we believe, in one of the 10th arrondissement of the city. A man thought to be in his 70s has been arrested outside the Kurdish cultural centre, Amit Kayar. Paris police have warned the area should be avoided while an investigation takes place. So it is apparently some kind of shooting incident. Several people injured at the moment. That's all we know. A man thought to be in his 70s arrested. It took place in the 10th arrondissement of the city. We'll bring you more on that, of course, as we get it. We will also, of course, bring you more of your calls too before we speak to Paul Charles, I should say, rather, CEO of Travel Consultancy, to get the latest for what's going on out there on the roads, on the trains, and of course at the airports as well, because it's the first day, I believe, of the Border Force strike, which might make it less difficult to leave. Or less easy to leave, rather, but certainly more difficult to come into the country. But let's have a look at what's coming up tonight at 7 p.m. Are you feeling festive yet? Well, you should be, because it's time for Plank of the Week, tonight at 7 p.m. It might be the season of goodwill to all men, and even women, and even non-binary people, but I tell you what, we're not going to be nice to anybody, because this is where we tell you who is the Plank of the Week. And join me with Will Geddes, Isabel Oakeshott, Reem Ibrahim, and Andre Walker. Talk TV, 7 p.m. Don't miss it. Plank of the Week, 7 p.m. tonight. Don't miss it. Followed, of course, by the Talk Royal Special, which I think I may also be on, it has to be said. Now, we're going to take a couple of calls very shortly, a couple of tweets here as well that have come in that I want to read to you. Let's see this one. I want to see the Albanians in posh cars that brought London to a standstill sent back to Albania, says Carol. We'll see. Why will we turn a blind eye to them? Number plates and footage readily available to see who they are. Made a mockery of the police standing watching them. Well, certainly it didn't look great, did it, for the police? It did look like these were people who were very much able to afford some very, very expensive cars, considering that they might not be perhaps coming here to do work which was thought to be very well paid. Who could imagine how that could happen? Now, let us talk, if we can now, to Paul Charles, CEO of Travel Consultancy, because 20 million trips are expected over the course of the next 24 to 48 hours. People are going to be travelling by road. They're going to try to travel by train today, but if you can't get a train before something like 9 a.m. tomorrow, the advice is not to bother. So let's find out from Paul how it's going. Paul, very good morning to you. Merry Christmas.
Good morning, and the same to you, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I get the sense that a lot of people have been trying to sort of begin their getaway slightly earlier, like possibly yesterday, maybe even today, rather than leaving it till tomorrow. What are you seeing at the moment out there?
Yes, I mean, certainly the best advice is to travel by this evening if you can, because tomorrow will be much more difficult, with trains certainly winding down, if they are running at all, from 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So, yes, best advice is to try and go as early as possible, certainly not to travel tomorrow if you can avoid it. And, of course, even today we're seeing disruption caused by some of the effects of the differing strikes. We have highways officials on strike, which is affecting roads in the southeast of England. We have, of course, the Border Force strike you've mentioned, which is so far appearing to be pretty smooth, but there's a lot of the day left yet for those flights coming in later on in the day to be affected. Yeah. So overall, fairly smooth, but busy in a lot of places as people begin their getaway. Yes, I mean, I suppose one of the unknowing things that the sort of known unknowns, if you like, is the Highways Agency strike, because I think that starts tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not quite sure what that really means for people who are driving. What should they be looking out for? Well, again, this is members of the PCS union who are striking over pay, and essentially they are concerned they're not getting enough pay, they're not seeing the government at the negotiating table, and they are usually officers who will check roads. If there's an incident going on, they might alert police perhaps more quickly than the police might be alerted to. They are officers who patrol some of our motorway networks and A roads, checking for disruption. If there are heavy loads being escorted, for example, then they might be involved in those. So they're sort of road safety officers and road safety officials who ensure that our roads are free-flowing. So if they're not on duty, then there could be a major blockage, and it would take some time to remove it, for example. So
although some people often say if they're removed, maybe the blockages are also removed. I've got this from Kingsbridge. It said, my daughter flew in from Abu Dhabi via Istanbul to Gatwick this morning, straight through customs, security and baggage, and on a train within 30 minutes of landing. It's never been so quick. Border Force strikes are great.
Well, that's one of the rarer stories, I must say. I mean, one of the issues, of course, if you're flying in, and don't forget, it's only arrivals affected by the border force dispute. If you're flying in, then chances are in the next few days your trains won't be running, and you get an impression of Britain that is not working. You get an impression of a country that has so many issues that you wonder why you flew in the first place. But I think we're going to see many of the difficulties towards the end of the strike period, around about the 29th, 30th. Those are busy days for flights coming into Heathrow, Gatwick, Manchester, Birmingham, etc. And that's when I think we'll see more issues.
Yes, I think that's right. So in general, if you're travelling by car today, are there sort of any bottlenecks that you've seen approaching anybody we should be careful about?
No, there's quite a lot of disruption on the key motorways, actually, the M6, the M1. They're looking very busy, but the traffic's moving. You can expect a few issues from time to time, of course, as you get some disruption at some junctions. Very difficult to predict sometimes. But so far, things are relatively smooth. They will be much busier later today. A lot of people will be leaving workplaces, will be choosing to travel to maybe holiday homes if they're lucky, or to see family during the Christmas period later today. So it's this afternoon you're going to see the real disruption.
And for those of us, he hastened to add, with entirely self-interest at heart, tomorrow morning I'm thinking might not be a bad time to be driving.
Well, if you go early, yes, definitely. I think you will see busier roads from late morning onwards when people do like to travel. But if you go early on, yes, you'll be fine. Depends where you're going to, of course. If
Not
you're going
far.
if you very wise. I mean, a lot of people have chosen to stay in the UK this year and not even go near an airport, which is probably wise, bearing in mind some of the disruption planned. But if you're travelling on the roads, yes, the earlier the better is always the best advice. And that also goes for things like going to supermarkets and things. Make sure you're going early as possible so you're not up in the rush.
If you haven't done your shopping yet, you should be ashamed of yourself, I think is what I would say. Paul, thank you very much indeed. Have a good Christmas. Paul Charles, CEO of Travel Consultancy there. Let us know if you are out and about and there are problems wherever you are, because we can tell everybody else. But at the moment, from what we're hearing, things are going reasonably smoothly. And of course, as often is the case, as we heard from our texter there, from his daughter coming in from Abu Dhabi, sometimes when you remove the border force, actually things go smoother. Maybe when you get rid of the highways agency people who are holding up all the traffic all the time, coning off roads, maybe it'll be better. Who can say? Let's talk to James, who's in Manchester. Hello, James.
Oh, hello.
How you doing?
All right, thank you.
Good man. Merry Christmas to you.
And you, yeah.
So, what have you got for us?
Well, it's just about Every. You were talking about Every, weren't you?
Yes.
Just that my son, he sent me an iPad boxed, you know, an old iPad in a box, which was delivered with a guy at the speed of light, because he gave it me and disappeared. And when I held it in my hand, there was nothing. It was light as a feather. I thought, what's wrong here?
Right.
But we'd been inspecting some knitting stuff for my wife, so I thought, oh, obviously it's knitting stuff, that's why it's light.
Yeah.
Looked at it, it'd been cut open and then sealed up with some tape, you know, fragile, don't open and all that lot. And after many, many calls, my son to Every, and me signing one of these affidavit things that I hadn't definitely not...
you hadn't got it, basically.
I hadn't got it, in other words, yeah. The end thing was that they said to us that we were both liars, that it had been delivered.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. In fact, I've got an email just in front of me while we're talking.
Yeah.
And it was one of the last ones he got, and he said, "Thank you for contacting Every. This email address is no longer a customer service contact channel, so if you have any question about a parcel, please visit," and it gives you a web address, where you can use our digital assistant, Holly, to log an inquiry with our customer service, and she will point you in the right direction.
Unbelievable. Was it never resolved then? You never got any compensation or anything?
No, we'd just given in at the end. You just couldn't get anywhere.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, that really is shocking. And, I mean, a lot of people have a similar story, James, which is even more disturbing. But, listen, thanks for letting us know. Because there doesn't seem to... This is why we had a sort of a consumer specialist on at the beginning of the week, because it didn't seem that there was any kind of form of final resting place that you could go to get an adjudication. You know, you can't go to the company that... are delivering your package. You can't go to the person that you bought it from, particularly if it's somebody in your family. The thing's gone missing, it's probably been stolen, and there is no recompense for that. And that seems to me to be entirely wrong. We've got some more details from Paris. Charles Bremner, Times correspondent there, says there are now 2 dead after that shooting in central Paris. A gunman opened fire in central Paris in the 10th arrondissement, killing 2 and injuring several others. It was at a cultural centre for Kurds, it would seem. An elderly man has been arrested by the police. We'll bring you more on that. More details will be published as they are, as we can get them. And don't forget, of course, if you are listening to Talk Radio, you can watch the programme as well on talkTV. That's on Sky 522, Virgin 606, Freeview 237, Freesat 217, or via YouTube or the talkTV app. Coming up next, Dr. Sebastian Gorka joins us from the United States of America. He's going to bring us the latest from there. This is talkTV.
On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV. Talk TV News at 12.
Good afternoon, I'm Emily Rose Adams. The Royal College of Nursing says that nurses in England will strike again on January the 18th and 19th unless discussions with the government over pay are reopened. It's after 21,000 nurses walked out over 2 days this month, but unions say more hospital trusts will take part in the next round of strikes. Well, that's as the GMB union has announced that ambulance strikes planned for next week have been called off after amazing public support. But the union will instead take part in a coordinated strike with Unison members on the 11th of January. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak says he's sad and disappointed as severe travel disruption threatens to cause chaos to people's Christmas plans. It says more than 1,000 members of the Border Force staff from the PCS union walk out at 6 of Britain's biggest airports. The union says action could continue in the new year without a pay increase, and workers on the picket line say the government's offer isn't good enough.
Our members simply can't afford not to put in for a pay rise that just goes along with the increase in inflation that is currently standing at 10%. So it's not even a pay rise; it is keeping in parallel with inflation.
Meanwhile, there's further disruption today with a series of localised strikes on Britain's rail networks. It means motorists could face one of the busiest days of the year on the roads. But one woman's told us that she backs striking workers, even though they've put her Christmas plans into chaos.
I think what we need to look at as a country is our infrastructure is crumbling, and workers are out on strike because they're not being listened to, because they're being overworked, because they're under mental stress, and I think our government's to blame, not the strikers.
Some breaking news, and 2 people have died and 4 others are wounded after a shooting in the centre of Paris. The suspected gunman has been arrested, but police have urged people to avoid the area. An inquest heard the provisional cause of death of 4 people who died when a boat capsized in the Channel on December the 14th is drowning. The coroner said the victims are still unidentified, but police say it's possible 2 were Afghan nationals and the others were Senegalese. The inquest has been suspended amid an ongoing police investigation. And England World Cup winner George Cohen has died at the age of 83. His former club Fulham have announced. The right-back played in the side and was vice-captain in 1966's famous 4-2 victory over West Germany in the final. Well, scorer of a hat-trick that day, Sir Geoff Hurst, says he's very sad to hear the news, adding everyone without exception always said that George was such a lovely man. And now time for today's weather with Isabel Lang.
Business sponsors talkTV weather.
Hello. There's a 3-way split in the weather today. Central areas look really wet and dull as well, and this frontal system will only slowly track its way up into northern England later. Some snow for some of the higher routes. Chilly to the north, maybe a little bit of wintriness there over higher ground, and in the south it'll brighten up after that wet start, and it will feel mild, particularly in the sunshine in the afternoon, with highs of around 11 or 12 Celsius. That wet weather gradually pushes its way up into Scotland. It does eventually take some mild air right up into the north for the start of Christmas Eve, but it takes its time, engaging in the cold air for a while, giving some snow, particularly north of the central belt. Those high routes could be quite snowy for a few hours, and then we'll find that gradually turns back to rain as the mild air creeps north. Further to the south, it'll be a mild, but not as murky a night, thankfully. Now, into Christmas Eve, temperatures really quite high for the time of year. You know, not bad at all out there, but there will be showers around, really squally and heavy showers with some thunder and hail possible across some western areas. The south and east looks quite nice, though, with some sunshine. And then as we head our way into Christmas Day, again, some showers around with temperatures on the mild side. It's not till Boxing Day when that cold air comes back.
Times Business sponsors talkTV weather.
Vanessa Felds. Join me every weekday from 4 till 7 on talkTV.
Good afternoon and welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on talkTV. It is the eve before Christmas Eve. The snow is falling behind me. It will be snowing probably in Scotland very shortly. We've got breaking news, of course, for you from Paris. 2 dead after a shooting. A gunman has opened fire in central Paris, killing 2 and injuring several others. The incident, according to La Parisienne, believed to have happened outside the Kurdish cultural centre called Amit Kaya in the 10th arrondissement. If you know the city well, you'll know where that is. Paris police have warned the area should be avoided. So if you've got any loved ones there, do let them know. A man thought to be in his 70s has been arrested after the incident, which is being described as horrific. We'll keep you updated with all of that, of course. Sebastian Gorka coming soon as well. The good doctor is going to join us to talk about all manner of things, including why the Twitter FBI raid and the Twitter FBI connection is indeed just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the way that the FBI has been operating in the virtual space of social media. We'll also be talking a bit about Donald Trump and why America seems, or certainly the Democratic side of America, seems to be still obsessed with stopping the man from ever gaining any kind of position of power electorally ever again. The latest multi-part conspiracy in a final report on the US Capitol attack coming out, of course, of the House of Representatives. Lots more to do, lots more to talk about, including, of course, coming up a little bit later on, the Perrier Awards making a return for the first time since very, very many months ago. I don't think we've been doing the Perrier Awards for most of this year, so I'm delighted to say that we will be doing it in the company of Jodie, who's going to be coming in to tell us all about it. Also, some very good news for you people who are not about strikes and all about trying to get away from this country. Apparently, the airports are running incredibly efficiently now that the Border Force have gone on strike, because guess what? The Army's in charge and they know what they're doing. So if you're flying in or you're flying out, the good news is it will probably be even quicker than it was when the Border Force were actually doing work. Brilliant. Maybe we should put the Army in charge of the trains as well, and the Post Office, and the NHS. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Let's get it on. Welcome to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. We have that breaking news with you from Paris. We'll bring you updates on that as they come in. But let us say a very good afternoon and a very good morning in America and a very Merry Christmas to Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Sebastian, how are you?
I'm well, but you need a roof on your studio. It's snowing.
Do you know, I've been asking the boss all week if we could put some snowy background on, and finally we've done it the day before Christmas Eve actually gets here. But the best news of all today is that now that the Army's running the airport, it's all getting a lot more efficient. Doesn't that tell you something?
Look, I spoke with my best old mucker from school yesterday who lives in Uxbridge.
Yeah.
He said that you've got people who dial 999 who are stuck in an ambulance outside the hospital.
Yeah.
They won't let them in the hospital because they don't have nurses. What is going on, Mark?
Well, I mean, they've got nurses, but what they say is they don't have beds because they've got people in the beds who can be discharged, but there's no care homes for them. You know, the whole system has broken down. And you know what? I'm not one of those who blames the government for this. I blame the NHS. The NHS is run by incompetent managers, by woke, nonsensical idiots who wouldn't know, a patient if it fell on them. You know, there's 50% or more of the people working in the NHS who don't actually do medical jobs. They've got plenty of diversity managers. They've got loads of, net zero coordinators. They've even got they've advertised a job for somebody for $120,000 a year to talk to people about lived experience. I don't even know what that is. They spend £66 million a year on interpreters for people who don't speak English.
But it's not just the NHS, Mike. I sent my buddy a parcel. He wasn't home. He returned it to the US. And I said, when did I send this? I forgot when I sent this. I look on the postmark, Mike. I sent it to London in August, and it gets returned now. What is going on?
I know. Well, London is the centre of a country which has now become broken. And it's become broken for many reasons. Some of which are down to government, some of which are down to COVID, but some of which are down to just downright laziness. People have forgotten how to work hard. You and I, Sebastian, come from a generation where, I can't remember a day when I didn't do any work. From the age of about 14, I wanted to work, I wanted to do something, I wanted to make some money, I wanted to have a nice life, I wanted to have nice things. We now have generations of people, 2 generations, I think, of people who don't understand what that is.
I think we're due a war, aren't we, to teach what reality is really like. Isn't it about for a war.
I mean, absolutely right. Talking of which, let's talk about, first of all, your old boss, Donald Trump. The Democrats still seem to be obsessed with this man. I mean, what does he have to do for them to leave him alone? You know, he hasn't been president now for quite a while. They're talking about opening up his tax returns. They're trying to get, again, a decision made so that he can never run for office ever again. I mean, what's wrong with them?
It's really quite strange. So as of January 20th, my old boss will have left the White House 2 years ago. And I have this kind of dichotomy, this schizophrenia, where the left, the establishment, the mainstream media says, oh, he's a joke, he's a spent force, he's an irrelevance. Well, if he's irrelevant, if he's a spent force, why are you releasing his tax returns? Why are you dropping, you know, legislation and criminal referrals to the Department of Justice to ban him from running for any office again? If he's relevance, why would you have to do that, Mike? I'm a little confused.
Yeah, it is very odd, isn't it? And there's this vitriol against him, isn't there, where people just cannot let it go. You know, they've become almost kind of deranged about it. I mean, we used to call it Trump derangement syndrome. They still have it.
Yeah, they are recommending at the end of this show trial, this witch hunt, the January 6th committee that just shut down, they sent multiple criminal referrals to Biden's Department of Justice that if he were guilty would end up in him having a 40-year prison sentence. It's like your old crazy girlfriend who still has your phone number and still texts you at 3 a.m. They just can't get him out of their mind, Mike.
Yes. Yeah, that's giving me some shivers, that particular reference, but there we are. Let's talk about the FBI. What the hell is going on there? Paying Twitter to censor information. We're getting more and more information on all of this, but also you say this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, utterly. I mean, God bless Elon Musk. Whatever happens to Twitter in the future, you've got to understand Twitter is where the quote-unquote elite goes to for their news information. I mean, it really is this, you know, the blue checkmark Twitterati. It's a crucial platform for me especially. And thanks to Elon Musk, we now have, you know, Twitter files drop number 8. And we've got the internal emails. We've got the Slack channel texts of the FBI saying, will you delete XYZ accounts? And it's really strange. They're always conservative accounts. There never seems to be any liberal left-wing account that needs to be cancelled. FBI censoring a social media platform. That's actually a crime. We have something called the First Amendment that guarantees our freedom of speech. And then we have what? We find out that the FBI paid $3 million to Twitter for services rendered in there's going to be hell to pay in a new Congress when it gets sworn in January. But as the Mail reported just yesterday, this is the tip of the iceberg. Facebook is far more important when it comes to the general demographics acquisition of political information before an election. And we find dozens and dozens of former CIA agents at Facebook. That's called the deep swamp, and we need to get to the bottom of that.
Yeah, it really is, because the thing about all of these big companies, and until Elon Musk got his hands on Twitter, nobody really knew how they ran. You couldn't get anybody to speak to. I had issues with Facebook years and years ago when I had my old show on overnights on talkSPORT, and I had a show page which suddenly disappeared. Nobody could explain why it disappeared, but it couldn't be found. I couldn't find anybody to talk to about it. There was nobody that I could ask a question to. There was no phone numbers. There were no email addresses. There were faceless people making decisions about what you can and cannot say. And who knows why? And who knows how many people were affected by that?
Yeah, there is no human being you can interact with if you've got an issue on one of these social media platforms. And let's be honest. So, you know, nowadays, very few people actually read a newspaper. Very few people watch, you know, classic TV. In America, the top-ranked TV show is Tucker Carlson's. On a good night, he gets 5 million viewers. That's in a nation of 330 million people. So most people get their political information before an election from their phones, from media. So when the FBI, when the CIA are we found out the chief lawyer, the chief attorney for the FBI just magically swanned into a position as deputy chief counsel for Twitter. And as Elon Musk is trying to get this stuff out, this James Baker chap, this swamp creature who's been in the DOJ since the 1990s, he's scrubbing the emails. He's censoring them. And when Elon found out, he fired him instantly. But the question is, was this guy just a rogue actor, or was he doing it on the say-so of the FBI? I think we know the answer to that question.
I mean, and the FBI, the same FBI who raided Mar-a-Lago, of course, without really giving a reason as to what they were looking for, and having still not found whatever it was that they were looking for, and we still don't really know what it was all about.
Oh, allow me to correct you. They gave us a reason, but they gave us a reason after they raided him. They gave us 3 different reasons. First, it was the nuclear code.
Yes.
Then Espionage Act. Then it was the archival material. And it's weird. Whatever happened to that story? I guess they never found the nuclear codes that my boss stole. It's really strange.
I mean, old Hoover must be rolling in his grave. You know, this is not the FBI. I mean, he set it up to be a relatively corrupt and right-wing organisation. What's it become, for heaven's sake?
This is personal for me. So if you're not familiar with what I did prior to my time in the White House, I had my wife and I had a company with the only external counterterrorism training contract on ISIS and Al-Qaeda for the Bureau. So I would travel 20,000 miles a month. I'd go from one FBI field office to the other, giving them orders. I was proud. They gave me the challenge coin and the little pin at each office. Today, after what we've learned in just the last 2 years, we have a phrase in America. If the G-men arrived at my door, I would tell them, pound sand and talk to my attorney. Get out of my face. That's what, if they've done that to me, who was, liked the FBI, worked with the FBI, done that to Seb Gorka. What do you think the average punter, the average...
It doesn't bear thinking about. It's dreadful, isn't it? Let's see. But I guess you could say the police state has been encouraged to operate like that by one Joseph Biden, the man that currently sits in the White House. He's had what can only be described as a pretty bad year, hasn't he?
Pick any topic. Doesn't matter what the topic is.
Walking, cycling.
Border, foreign relations, it doesn't matter. It's a disaster. 2 million illegals that we know of. 107,000 Americans dead from fentanyl poisoning that is being carried across the border by smugglers. Yeah. You look at 9% inflation. Pick any topic. It's a disaster. This doddering old man in the White House is probably making Jimmy Carter feel very good today, because at least Jimmy Carter's no longer the worst president we've ever had.
Yeah. It is shocking, though, isn't it, that there isn't seemingly a kind of a successor even being found as we speak in the Democratic ranks. There just doesn't seem to be one.
Well, there is, sadly, and it's the cackler. It's Kamala. And Kamala...
No, surely not.
Well, look, how can they get rid of her? She's a woman. She's a person of color, to use their terminology. Yeah. If they try and get rid of her, could you imagine the hullabaloo from the woke leftists, the people who say you can't get rid of her because of her gender and the pallor of her skin. This is what they painted themselves into, this corner. This woman who, by the way, you know what her job has been for the last 2 years? This will amuse you. Yeah. She is the border czarina. Nice job, Kamala.
Doesn't bear thinking about. Brilliant. So Kamala Harris, nil. Mexico, 2 million.
2 million. You got it, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Listen, Sebastian, have a wonderful Christmas. We'll speak to you, I'm sure, in the new year. Have a good one. Keep the fight going. It is extraordinary what's going on in America. They're going to have a terribly bad storm there as well. Much worse than anything we've ever seen here. But the sun's now shining. 2 hours of this show, and look what's happened. The skies and the gloom has lifted, and it's only optimism all the way forward. Coming up very shortly, we're going to have the Perrier Awards. I'm looking forward to that. Some calls from you guys, though, coming up next. Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. Coming up in just over half an hour's time, we're going to be talking to Russell Quirk, who's in for Ian Collins this afternoon. We've got Kevin O'Sullivan, of course, doing Drive from 4 o'clock. Then it's Plank of the Week from 7, followed by a royal special version of The Talk at 8 o'clock. And that's all also including me as well. Andrew Tate's interview also on Piers Morgan's going out later on tonight around about 11 p.m. as well, so look out for that. Lots more to do. Of course, we were bringing you every day in December the Advent calendar of strikes, because we've told you from the beginning of the month that basically there will be a strike every single day. Is in Middlesex. Hello, George.
Hello there. Just one quick thing about the Border Force.
Yes.
I mean, their union is actually suing the government about sending illegal immigrants to Rwanda. I mean, what good are they, Brit?
Absolutely ridiculous. Well, you know, I would sack them all. Just get rid of them. You know, this is what Ronald Reagan did with the air traffic controllers in America. Exactly. They went on strike, he fired them all, and nothing suffered a jot.
Well, I think it'd be a lot better without them.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I rang for is, Mike, is the probation service. You obviously saw on the front page of the Telegraph that guy who murdered, was it 5 people, I think?
Yes.
3 kids. And he was classed as low risk. He was an arsonist.
Yeah.
And the probation officers were working from home. That sort of job, I'm sorry, you cannot work from home.
No. You have to go out and about and meet people, don't you?
Of course you do. And why are these people who are the dangerous arsonists ever being released?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Arsonists, murderers, serial rapists, paedophiles, terrorists should not be released ever.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a dreadful state of affairs, but it's always been the case, because the people, unfortunately, who run the probation service are those do-gooding types who think that everybody's got a rehabilitation in them. Well, I'm sorry, but an awful lot of people cannot be rehabilitated, and this guy's one of them.
Mike, you will never, ever rehabilitate a paedophile or serial rapist. Any criminal could be rehabilitated, then not a chance.
Yeah. But don't worry, though, George, because they've ordered a full inquiry into the case, which will report sometime next year.
Next year?
Yeah.
It'll take a couple of weeks. Why does it take so long?
I know. Absolutely ridiculous. The Chief Inspector of Probation is going to be in charge of it. What I suggest is fire him as well. I mean, I think we should change the culture in this sort of civil service that we have here, and we should just fire people. It seems impossible to fire anyone.
Don't you think we've got far too many civil servants?
Of course.
Half the NHS budget is spent on nobodies.
Yeah. Same with the council.
Nobodies.
I mean, most of your council tax goes to the salaries and pensions of all the people that work there.
It's got to change.
It has got to change.
I'd like to get the health minister on here. I'd like to speak to him.
Yeah, all right. We'll try and get him on, George. We'll try and do that. And you're right about the probation service. Absolute shambles. Ridiculous story, that. Absolutely awful. Anne's in West Sussex. Hello, Anne.
Hello, Mike.
How are you?
I'm all right, thank you, Mike.
Good.
You really get me going.
Merry Christmas.
I'm just going to talk about young people working and not working effectively.
Yes.
I have to say, I sat at the meetings when they wanted to change the probation service.
Yeah.
All the people on that table disagreed, opposed it, and it has been changed, and all the qualified staff, I think, left. I don't know if they privatised it, but the whole system is in this country is every so often we change everything, get rid of the experts who know what they're doing.
Yes.
We give it to a company who doesn't. The reason I rang you initially, Mike, was because my children at 13, 14 could go to work in Boots, Sainsbury's, wherever. That really helped us as a family, that they were getting some money.
Of course.
They learnt the work culture from a young age, and today keep them at school until they're 18 or whatever. And they don't know, I'm sorry, not only do they not know how they have to behave in the workplace, some of them, but they also... the other strand of that was there isn't only young people, because you all know, everybody out there, you try to contact any organisation, you've got the whole dead phone system, they're working from home.
Yes.
Fine to us. And you cannot have a country that doesn't have people working in the front.
No, exactly. I mean, most of them, you can't get hold of anybody anymore, can you?
So how can we be... You know, this country can go downhill very quickly with the culture we have at the moment. And it's how countries fail. And I think most of us older people are amazed that today I've been to Marks and to Boots, very few people serving, long queues, And I thought, you know, my generation had it when actually customer service was vital.
Yes, absolutely. And the customer was always right. Remember those days? Nowadays, you're lucky if you can even get what you've paid for.
Oh, I do despair, not for me, but for the younger generations that have no idea what it is like to live in a world where you matter.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right.
Listen, Mike, can I quickly say...
Go on.
We give the funding to the nurses, and I don't think it can be as high as they want. I do not want it to go to the chief execs and the highly paid admin staff.
Right.
Where they actually get enormous pensions. We really need it to go in the front line. And the last time Labour gave a lot of money to the NHS, only 5% got to the front line.
Yes, that's absolutely right. The NHS is a complete and utter behemoth. It needs to be stripped down and reset, I have to say. Anne, thank you very much indeed for a very sensible call. Quickly from Robert in London. Hi, Robert. Hello, Robert. Are you there? No, Robert's not there. Just watched Richard Tice earlier on your show. Had it recorded. What a really nice guy. Talks a lot of sense. Obviously not as much as you, the mighty Mike, as says Ian in Glasgow. Definitely going to vote for his party at the next general election. Richard Tice talks so much sense. He will reform the country, which we clearly need, but it must be quick before it's too late, says Glynis. Well, I mean, don't give him too much of a big up because he's already hugely big-headed, and he thinks that I'm always wrong. Now, I've got another great email here from somebody who's been the victim of an every missed delivery. We'll get to that later on. Coming next, though, I'm delighted to say, it is time for the Perrier Awards. Coming at 7 p.m. on Friday, it's time for Plank of the Week. That's right, it's when we decide who has been the biggest plank this week. Has it been a politician? Has it been a member of the royal family? Or possibly two? Has it been a football team? Has it been an entire country? We will bring you the nominations. I will bring you the actual plank, and the prize is right in front of me here. Don't forget, it's talkTV, it's me, Mike Graham, and a gorgeous panel of great guests. It's all here. It's 7 p.m. on Friday.
This is talkTV News.
Good afternoon, I'm Zora Suleiman. The Royal College of Nursing says nurses in England will strike again on January 18th and 19th unless discussions with the government over pay are reopened. It's after 21,000 nurses walked out over 2 days this month, but unions say more hospital trusts will take part in the next round of strikes. Well, that's as the GMB union has announced that ambulance strikes planned for next week have been called off after amazing public support. But the union will instead take part in a coordinated strike with Unison members on the 11th of January. Well, meanwhile, Rishi Sunak says he's sad and disappointed as more than 1,000 Border Force staff from the PCS union walk out at 6 of Britain's biggest airports, threatening to cause travel chaos. And workers on the picket line say the government's offer isn't good enough.
Our members simply can't afford not to put in for a pay rise that just goes along with the increase in inflation that is currently standing at 10%. So it's not even a pay rise; it is keeping in parallel with inflation.
Police in Paris say the incident is over after 2 people were killed and 4 others were wounded in a shooting in the centre of the French capital. A 69-year-old suspected gunman has now been arrested. An England World Cup winner, George Cohen, has died at the age of 83. His former club, Fulham, have announced. The right back played in the side and was vice-captain in the 1966 famous 4-2 victory over West Germany in the final. While scorer of a hat-trick that day, Sir Geoff Hurst, said he's very sad to hear the news, adding everyone without exception always said that George was such a lovely man. Well, that's all for now. We'll have more in half an hour.
Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. The snow is falling behind me. The sun is shining. I cannot tell you how good the weather has got since this show started. I'll tell you what, when we started at 10 a.m, it was literally pitch black outside. You couldn't see across the river. You couldn't see the Tower of London. Now, I can see all the way to Hackney, which isn't always a good thing if you know London reasonably well. Now, we have now got the last and final piece of the jigsaw, something we've wanted to do for a very long time and something that they told us we couldn't do. We stopped doing it. We weren't allowed to do it anymore. Why? Because so many people complained that we were making fun of them. because, you know, if you are a veteran of this show, you will remember the Perrier Awards. They were named originally for one of my former co-stars on this station, Katy Perrier, who used to work with Theresa May and preferred working with me a lot more, I have to say. So now, I'm delighted to introduce for the first time the brand new Perrier Awards with Jodie McGowan. Let's go. Look at that, the Perrier Awards 2022. Jodie McGowan, welcome to the Independent Republic.
Thanks for having me. That's a nice little theme tune.
Isn't it good? Yeah, we like all that. That was done by Rory, I think. Well done, Rory. He likes to get recognition for his work, so well done to him. Anyway, you're looking very Christmassy.
Thank you. And I did have a crown on at first.
You had a crown on earlier. I wasn't quite sure about that.
I didn't want the crown either.
Because you don't seem like the princessy type.
Well,
it's not really you, is it?
I'm a princess.
Are you?
Mike, yeah.
Are you really? Yeah. I mean, you can be if you want, but you don't need a crown to be a princess.
That's very true.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, the Perrier Awards, for those of you who don't know, are a sort of collection of you might call them the best bits, or indeed the worst bits of the year, where people have done stupid things on camera, and will now live to regret it because we're going to make them famous.
Yeah, essentially.
In case you missed it the first time around. So tell us how you put this together. You've been slaving away.
We've picked 8 clips from this year, and it is a tradition. So the first Perrier Awards, of course, has to go to you, Mike.
Does it?
Yeah, because
I didn't think I'd made any mistakes.
Technically, it's not a mistake, but since the launch of talkTV, we have obviously saw your transition.
Yes.
And you are now beautiful as ever.
Thank you.
So the amazing work of our hair and makeup girls, which you are also a great admirer. So much simply so, we can't allow anyone near the masterpiece that is you.
Let's have a look.
Mike, what we have now,
What's happened to your hair?
What's happened to your hair?
Yeah, but you normally have loads of hair.
I had it cut.
Doesn't get it, does he? Don't touch me.
What is that?
Do not touch me.
And what happens if I do?
You get a punch in the face.
Really?
Yeah.
You do? Good for social media.
You really do, yes.
Really?
Yeah. Gould, who for some bizarre reason wanted to touch my hair.
Was you really going to hit him if he touched your hair?
Well, the thing is, I gave him the look, I gave him the eyes, and he wasn't sure. He genuinely didn't know.
I've touched your hair plenty of times.
Yeah, well, you can. I just didn't want him doing it, you know, to be honest. I don't really touch any part of me, to be fair.
Now...
Sorry, Johnny.
The relaunch wasn't easy for everyone at the start, and even the very best professionals had a difficult time adapting to the new TV.
I didn't know they actually had that side. Where did that come from?
That was me in the makeup room before rushing them. I was like, I need to get on with Mike.
That is funny. Rob Rinder, God bless him. There we are.
We miss him.
We do.
Miss Rob Rinder.
Yeah, we like Rob.
On to the next one.
Next one.
Okay, so this one's my personal favourite, okay? Now, it isn't just the makeup we had to get used to. A new set brings with it new kit, and our next winner of the Perrier Awards wins a free week of training with our engineering team on the 8th floor, as well as the Perrier Awards for Women in Tech.
Julie Hartley-Brewer's talking, but nothing's coming out. That's unusual. You know.
I think you've got me. Good morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast. Team Julia Hartley-Brewer. Apologies. Problems with my microphone. Apologies for that.
Yeah, the problem with the microphone, Julia, was that she hadn't plugged it in, I think, right? Because she'd got up, because we've now got this new elaborate thing where not only are we connected by our ears, but also connected to a microphone. So if you ever get up and walk around, you have to plug it back in. But nobody told her to do that, apparently. So she opened the show with no sound. Well done, Julia. Hope you're having a nice holiday.
I was visual producing Julia that day. I had no idea what to do, so I just started playing an iPhone.
Yeah, just stick another thing on. But we're not as flexible as we used to be able to do that a lot more, whereas now we can't.
No.
So if you make a blunder now, it's more likely to be seen. than before.
You know, it's much tougher on yous. I feel for yous.
It is. Oh, it's a nightmare. Absolute nightmare. What do you got next?
Right, number 4 goes to the one and only Jez. Here at Talk TV, we get calls from viewers, as you would know. You get a lot of callers, and we do love them, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Now, sometimes our on-screen talent fail to hide their animosity towards the working man. The Say It With Chest Perrier Awards goes to...
I despise about this victimhood mentality. This is from Dan in County Durham. Oh, no, County Down.
Well done, Jezza. It's always a quick recovery for that one, isn't it?
It is. He wasn't in today as well. We've missed him.
County Down. No, I know he's got a thing he's got to deal with, I think. So
go and see a man about the job.
Yeah, absolutely right.
One of them. Clip 4 is a really good one. Of course, Jeremy Kyle wasn't the only one who was new at Talk TV. While Piers was off on holiday, we had former Media, Sport and Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries.
Oh, yes.
She took the helm, very quickly lost it. Here is the Perrier for Best Newcomer.
Welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Coming up on tonight's programme, for a change, a man who is going to clear up a woman's mess. That's Rishi's Bowers, the enters number 10. As you were, Sunak's stability extends to the cabinet with the big beefsteak and all her cages, but Braverman back at home in the Home Office. Sorry, I've just completely messed up. They're in our studio and we've risked them for a clue. Stick around for Just Stop Oil live.
It's brilliant, that. I mean, if you actually scripted that, you couldn't read it because you'd go, what? It was like word salad, the kind of which I've never heard before. Just words in like a random order.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, but I mean, even if you couldn't read, I was actually out there that night in Ealing when they were filming that, and you kind of going, even if you're misreading an auto cue, how do you manage to get all those words in the wrong place? It's incredible. Anyway, well done, Nadine. We'll see you soon, I'm sure.
The 6th one is my personal favourite. I said that about Julia, but this one...
Is this the real one?
This is the real one. Now, as the years pass, our very own Kevin O'Sullivan, who is also your best friend.
He is.
Naturally.
Yeah.
He had his moments, and they can be very forgetful. So here is the Perrier for Old Man Syndrome of the Year.
This is great, this one. I love this one.
Yeah, polarised politics, all that. Welcome back.
We've got a request to have that one again. Can we play it again? Because you've got to watch it carefully.
Yeah, polarised politics, all that. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks, Kev.
Oh.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
I do love Kev.
Yes.
I
thought you were going to show us the one with him and Saggers. Is that one in there? Anyway.
Every break ends that way, doesn't it? With Kev going,
welcome back. So, number 7, are we at?
We are.
Nearly
Johnny Gold. So now, during the ad breaks, our Talk TV presenters had to take a moment to rest and prep for the next segment. So, others like to have a moment of relaxation, Johnny Gold being one of them. So, let's take a look at the Staying Alert Perrier Awards.
What are they doing? Why are they not talking? If you're listening to this on the radio, I should have described it to people. That was basically Johnny Gould sitting back and then realising that he was back and then sitting forward but still not saying anything. Shall we do it again? Let's have another look. Quite remarkable. So here he is, coming back. No, he's not coming back. He's just sitting back with his arms, he's going like this. Here he comes. Come on, say something, Johnny. Say something. No. Zora. Any news? No. No news. Amazing.
That's the latest.
Terrific.
That is my personal favourite.
Yeah.
Remember that time when we had to do news within the show?
Oh, yes.
In the studio?
Yeah.
That was a tough time.
That was a bit of a tightrope, wasn't it?
Now,
we've had to do so many different things here. It's amazing that we've managed to sort of still remain relatively sane.
I know. I'm proud. I'm proud of you.
You should be. So, finally.
Final one has to go to the one and only Aaron.
Ah, yes.
You're the best Talk TV producer.
The boy wonder.
Actually, yeah.
Yes.
You're producer.
Exactly.
It's not the only talkTV presenters who have stumbled on here this year. Mike Graham's very own producer, Aaron Gonzalez, shows us that it's not all that easy to be in the hot seat. Someone needs to put a $5 in the swear jar. This Perrier Award goes to Producer of the Year.
Number 2, Mark Simmons comes in with...
Yeah.
This is the worst one I read, and I don't even really get it. Did you know if you get pregnant in the Amazon, it's next day delivery? What does that mean?
Yeah, careful. Unbelievable. We should have that one again.
Yeah.
You know, this is the guy who said, you know, I can do
Number
this.
2, Mark
I think I
Simmons
should
comes
come
in
in and do
with...
it. Yeah.
This is the worst one I read, and I don't even really get it. Did you know if you get pregnant in the Amazon, it's next day delivery? What does that mean?
Yeah, careful.
I love that.
He forgot he was not in the pub. Yeah, so he's never been back in since then.
No, this is why I'm here now.
That's why you've done very well. You haven't sworn at all, so well done.
Yeah.
Jodie McGowan. Do we go out on the outro as well? Jodie, brilliant. Have a great Christmas. Thank you very much indeed. That was the Perrier Awards for 2022. We got more coming up after this. Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on talkTV, the final show before Christmas. I'll be back, of course, next Thursday, and there'll be all sorts of stuff to watch over the Christmas period, including Plank of the Year, Plank of the Week tonight from 7. There's a couple of talks that we've done, the Jeremy Kyle Christmas special as well. That went out last night for the first time, but you'll see it. If you missed it, you'll have another couple of chances to see it, of course, as well. I've got yet another bit of praise from Richard Tice, sounding more statesmanlike every time he's on the radio, says Robin in West Sussex. Plus, it helps that he's nice looking. For heaven's sake. And his team, it helps. Thank you for your shows throughout the year. Kept me sane in amongst this madness. A happy Christmas to you all. And when are you doing another People's Panel? There's a good idea. Maybe we should do another one of those in the new year, as we somehow sort of eke our way through 2023. I've got this from Shana, I think it is, who says this. I had a delivery from Every which I had cancelled. I told the driver it had been cancelled, and he took it back after taking a photo of it at my feet. I have CCTV of him taking the parcel back to his van. I looked on the tracking and it said it had been delivered. I've been in contact with Every and they now say it's lost and offered me £20. I told them I want £56, which was the value, got nothing back. So I contacted BBC Watchdog, and after a few emails and phone calls and God knows what, I had to sign for them to use my CCTV. They said, could I go to London to be filmed? I said, I'm too busy, I'd do a Zoom call. I had a call from them saying that they would call last Tuesday, but they haven't done it. I haven't heard a word. They're as good as Every, but I think by all the complaints Every get, they will be on Watchdog soon. Well, if the BBC can ever get their cojones together. Howard's in Blackpool. Hello, Howard.
Mike, happy birthday. Oh, sorry.
Happy birthday. And happy Christmas as well, coincidentally.
I like to be ahead of the game. I like to be ahead of the game.
You do. Absolutely right. How you doing?
As I talk to the presenter of the year, in my opinion.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks to all of you for listening and keeping it all going.
Yeah, well, that's what it's all about, isn't it? The majority of you getting out, albeit just through one media.
The silent majority, yes, exactly right.
Absolutely.
Exactly right. What do you got for us, Howard?
Quick comments, really, on the nurses' strike and the paramedics.
Yes.
I think they should go upstairs to their actual employers, who are the trusts that they work for,
yes,
and speak to the chief executives and the senior managers and ask them for more money.
Yes.
They're the ones who control the budgets.
Right.
They should be finding out where the money's going. 200 billion a year, that's enough to run a small country almost, isn't it?
It really is. I can't believe that people still actually think they don't have enough money.
Well, this is it. Where is it all going?
Yeah.
I mean, but of course, this is the problem with public service, the public service sector, isn't it?
Yeah.
But they need to ask them, where is the money? And we'd like more money out of the budget that you're controlling.
Yes. Yeah, it's absolutely right. And also, the government is not to blame for the failings of the NHS. The failings of the NHS are entirely down to the NHS and being badly run by people who work for the NHS.
Being very badly run.
Yeah.
My family's experienced it. My father had his wedding ring stolen off his finger within 10 minutes of him dying. My mother died from injuries, 2 broken legs, on being discharged from hospital. Died in my arms the following day. So I don't have a lot of truck for the NHS.
That's
but
dreadful.
That aside, this is what they need to do. And in regards to Nicola Sturgeon, she likes having referendums or trying to have them. Put this gender bill to the public in Scotland and see what their reaction is.
Yes, that's a very good idea.
She'll find out, like most people, that these people, all right, we've got to be caring about them and all that sort of thing, but you can't change nature. You can't turn a seahorse into a racehorse.
No.
I'm sorry.
No.
As much as they try, I'm not saying these people shouldn't be taken care of or anything like that, but the majority of us are being pushed to one side now for all the minority points of view.
Absolutely right.
That isn't good.
It's not right. Howard, you make a great point, and thanks very much for your call. Very stalwart caller, that Howard, from Blackpool. Robert is in London. Let's go back to Robert. Hello, Robert.
Hello, Mike.
Yes, what can I do for you, Rob? Happy Christmas to you, too.
Yeah, I just wanted to ring up about Pat Cullen.
Yeah.
The head of the nurses union.
Yes.
My son looks up for me because I'm getting on a bit.
Don't worry.
What sort of wages? She's on £197,000 a year.
Yeah, not bad, is it?
Right. No, it's ridiculous to pay someone who has failed their exam to get into work, a job, all the GCSEs.
Yeah.
I left school at 14. But so I was useless at school because when I was at school, I mean, well, I can't even remember how long ago. I'm 70 now, so a long time ago.
Yes.
I was at school, you never got taught by good teachers then. They used to be killer. The names of the teachers was bad. Killer Keys, Basher Baines, all this.
Right.
And it was, they could hit you then. And
yeah, they could.
With slippers and sticks and... anyway, I'm just saying, she's a member of Sinn Féin, and it did say something about supporting the IRA as well.
Well, I haven't seen that, but yeah, I mean, certainly the money that she makes is absolutely prodigious, and she certainly is somebody who, shall we say, is a little bit economical with the truth at times. Robert, listen, have a good Christmas. Thank you very much indeed for your call. I'm just going to move on to David, who's in London as well. David, hi.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah.
You were talking earlier to Richard Tice about the state of the economy.
Yes.
Mike, the government and Sadiq Khan have cut road space left, right and centre.
They have.
But they haven't said, Mike, how can a city operate if the only way of getting around is by a bicycle?
Yeah. Well, it is the only way that you can properly get around, but of course I came in this morning and the rain was tipping it down. Did I see any cyclists? No, of course not, because they don't like the rain, the cyclists. It's a bit slippery for them. So there was not one cyclist using any of the vast space, which is the cycle lane, which goes in from where I live in the east of London into the centre of London. Absolutely not one. Now the sun's come out, there might be a few going back the other way, but I mean, it's a joke, isn't it?
It is, Mike, and the thing is, Mike, is that trips are taking far longer and businesses are suffering. And I'm not making any excuses for those couriers that damaging parcels.
No, it can't be easy, though, for them.
No, exactly, Mike, but they're getting increasingly frustrated because it's so difficult for them as well to get around.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. David, listen, great to hear from you. Have a good Christmas. Thanks very much for all your support during the year. Thanks to all of you for supporting this radio station, this TV station, and the Independent Republic of Mike Graham separately, of course. I'll be back, as I say, tonight on Plank of the Week, 7 p.m, then the talk, 8 p.m, and then a load of other stuff over the course of the Christmas holidays. And then I'll be back properly here on Thursday at 10 o'clock. Right now, though, for your delight and delectation, Mr. Russell Quirk.
Good afternoon.
Welcome,
how are you?
Welcome to the show. You're doing Ian Collins' show.
I'm doing a show, yeah.
Brilliant.
I'm hopefully a semi-worthy replacement.
Oh, I think so. I think so. Well, you've been working yourself up to it. I mean, you've been doing nothing. I don't know how you find time to do anything else at the moment.
I was going to say, you can say that yourself. It's good that you're actually having a bit of time off for once.
I am, yeah. I mean, I did go off and see my mother over in November in the States, and I had a quite nice holiday in the summer. So, yeah, but I know, listen, a few days off at home with the family before they get sick of me, which will be a wrecking around about Sunday afternoon.
Back with a bang next week.
I'll be back.
Let's hope the country's a better place, eh?
Well, I hope so. I mean...
Probably not, I'm afraid.
The thing that I like about the resilience of this country is that no matter what slings and arrows get fired at us, we somehow keep coming back for more. Well, these strikes have not crippled the country. They were meant to. The rail strike isn't really having an effect. Even the nurses' strike and the ambulance strike didn't really do much.
As I want to talk about a bit later on, the fact that the support for these strikers, not just the public, but amongst the strikers themselves, is waning. I mean, it really is diluting quite significantly.
Well, because they're not really achieving anything. They're not getting anywhere.
Well, we're getting used to it, aren't we?
And I mean, even John Rentoul, who's not exactly a right-wing fascist, said to me this morning that, they've got it wrong, the nurses, with this 19%. It's all very well for them to say, it's not real, is it? It's just a number.
Well, the chances there aren't. They're thinking if you start high, then you'll end up with a nice big kind of meaty pay rise.
Don't start too high, or else people walk away. I mean, any man selling you a carpet down the Bermondsey Market can tell you that.
And it means that the public have very little sympathy. And of course, the data shows, the stats show, that actually only about half of nurses have voted for this strike. Only about half of them. So
and I think there's hardly any of them actually on a picket line as well. Because we've been saying the last couple of days, a lot of the people on those picket lines are not even nurses.
Yeah. So my funny story of this afternoon is going to be the grandma that is charging her family for Christmas dinner. Brilliant. So against the background, I suppose, of a cost of living crisis, why not? So she's charging her family, all 12 of them, to come round and have dinner, and charging them in advance. She takes the money at the beginning of the month.
Wait till she sees HMRC popping around and asking for the VAT. That's what we go. Well, they were sitting down, weren't they? You better pay your VAT.
And the licensing authority asking if she's serving wine and beer.
Yeah, she'll be dragged out kicking and screaming and locked up for sure. Russell Quirk in for Ian Collins. Coming up at 4, it's Kevin O'Sullivan. We'll back with Plank of the Week at 7. Have a lovely Christmas. We'll see you after that. Don't eat too much, don't drink too much, and try not to punch anyone. That's all I can say, really. We'll see you later. This is talkTV.